that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, and the time is now 6:01 p.m. In order to limit attendance at public gatherings, a limited number of staff members will be in attendance in person at this evening's board work session. The following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Angie Cox, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick, and Catherine Sells. I've asked Ms. Lasan to lead us in prayer.
Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together here tonight. Thank you for a successful first day back at school. I just pray that you would be with all of the teachers and staff and the kiddos and their parents tonight. Hopefully everyone will get a good night's sleep. And I just pray that even those that aren't in our classrooms are able to learn and just glorify you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Dr. Rogers?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Sells, Board. Was a good day today. Really great to see kids and teachers in classrooms. So, and I appreciate those of you that went out to cheer on campuses. So, our cornerstone tonight is about resource stewardship, and just once again, I embrace innovation with a flexible, relevant, and solution-oriented mindset. I think we may get stuck on that I statement for a while, but anyway, it's just great to see the things that our teachers, the creativity, the way that they have solved problems and continue to solve problems. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees were given the opportunity to submit comments via LISD's website during the designated time frame. Any comments that would have been submitted would have been read at this time into the record. There were no comments submitted. So, Dr. Rabb?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, I'm going to ask Jason Cooper to go ahead and come on up. He's going to present our annual CTE update to you this evening. And we'll go ahead and get that up on the screen. And you also have a copy of the presentation for you this evening in your folders as well.
Works for you. Smallest font ever.
All right. Well, thank you for having me tonight. And Dr. Rogers, members of the board, thank you all for your continued support with our CTE programs. I know last February when we all were approving the anatomage table for Tech West, and y'all talked about the innovation and the technology and how proud y'all were of the programs, and it's definitely noticed and recognized, and we do appreciate that. The tagline, real innovation, limitless opportunity, I know it's for LISD, but we try to exemplify that in CTE more than ever with everything that we're doing now. So I definitely appreciate what y'all do to help us fulfill that. So looking at 2019 and 2020 in review. So last year, TEA decided to move from 16 to 14 career clusters within CTE. So they merged business, marketing, and finance into one career cluster, as well as adding an energy career cluster, which is currently the only CTE career cluster we do not offer. So that is the newest one, the energy cluster. We also offer 32 unique programs of study that we've identified. Some of our courses could actually align in multiple programs of study, but since a kid can only count for one program of study, we say we offer 32 unique programs of study just to give a true and accurate number. So looking at course enrollments, in 2019-2020, our CTE enrollment increased by over 300 students. And as mentioned, within the new CTE programs of study, we offer 32 unique program study sequences. Used to, we reported on the number of programs that we offered in CTE. In the future, we'll be announcing the number of programs of study that we offer. And our CTE classes also increased by 6 individual classes offered, which is mostly consists of our second-year programs in dual credit welding and dual credit firefighter programs. So that's the reasoning for the increase from 148 to 154. So we do have a lot of new CTE faces and a lot of new CTE programs in new places. So with the building of Tech West, this has also expanded our CTE offerings for 2021, which includes our building trade program, which is HVAC and electrical, our cybersecurity, horticulture, and vet tech program. The ag program, which includes ag mechanics, floral design, and animal science, moved to Tech West to allow enrollment to all 5 LISD high schools, as well as our culinary and hospitality program, which is expanding and moving from the Colony to Tech West as well. So those are programs that have been either relocated or are new to LISD for the first time. I know this was highly publicized last year on social media, but the popular Dawn Exploration Rocketry team was definitely a highlight last year. This is the team from Tech East that consisted of students from Hebron High School and Flower Mound High School. They took second place at the Battle of the Rockets, first and second place at the American Rocketry Challenge, including the Best Newcomer Prize. The students, as well as our sponsor, Ms. Carrie Nathan, who teaches STEM over at Tech East, they did a wonderful job representing LISD. So in the fall, our auto tech students from Tech East participated in the Fort Worth Auto Show competition. Students were partnered with Grubbs Infinity, who loaned the auto tech program a 2019 SUV for the students to practice at the school with. Students also worked with the lead tech at the dealership at Grubbs Infinity 3 times a week for 3 hours to learn on Infinity's systems and procedures. The morning session of competitions consisted of multiple stations, including technical information lookup, where students had the opportunity to repair information and specifications on vehicles, precision measuring with micrometers, interview skills, where students had a mock interview with a hiring team from a local dealership, and safety procedures. The afternoon session was the hands-on portion of the vehicle, where the students had an opportunity to perform a multi-point maintenance inspection, diagnose multiple concerns, a bad turn signal, check engine lights, radio malfunction, and they had to use the manufacturer scan tool to diagnose and fix the problems. And as far as how we fared in the competition, we did receive first place in the morning sessions, with one of our students receiving a perfect score with technical information lookup, another student receiving a perfect score in the interview skills. LISD also had second place in the afternoon hands-on portions, and each student won $2,000 in Snap-on tools and various items from Audi, Toyota, and Ford. Wow. And the neat thing about this auto show competition was just talking about the impact of our advisory board members and how pivotal that is to making sure that these kids get that industry experience inside and outside the classroom. Along with the advisory board members, our auto tech partnerships, 2 other programs that our Tech East Automotive students have partnered with are Honda and their Professional Automotive Career Training Program, which has started loaning the auto tech program vehicles for students to work on. The most recent was a 2015 Honda Civic that runs on natural gas. These students also volunteered at the Park Place Supercar Showcase charity event for the Baylor Scott and White Foundation at the Four Seasons Golf Course in Irving. So it was really neat to be able to see these students have the opportunity to partner with these advisory boards. So Hebron High School hosted their annual Digital Divas event organized by computer science teacher Jared Stites. It was attended by nearly 300 middle school and high school female students. This event was a huge success, with many LISD teachers and staff assisting by volunteering. And as in the program of study that we talked about with reorganization, computer science is one of the programs that was moved into CTE. So even though this is an annual event that's been presented in LISD many times, this is the first time we've presented on it from CTE. So our inaugural Firefighter Academy. So after launching the 2-year dual credit firefighter EMT program at LHS in 2018, we graduated our first inaugural class in December with 13 students. 6 of them earned their basic fire and protection certification, and 6 students went to finish the EMT program in the spring. 3 of those ended up earning their emergency medical technician basic certification, and we're still waiting the results on 2 more of those students from the EMT certification as well. And some of these pictures are from the DFW live fire. It was really neat to be able to go out here and take a look at the DFW Airport live fire event that they do. It's not simulated. It is real live fires, and the heat's coming right off of it. So if y'all are ever interested, they said they can put you in uniform and let you go in and fight those if you would like. So keep that in mind, just if you're interested.
I'm good. Oh, my goodness.
Obviously, one of the strongest things that we do in CTE is looking at our certification. In light of the circumstances from the spring, this past year, our CTE students were still able to obtain 601 industry certifications that were recognized for CCMR accountability. Previously, we reported certifications that were recognized by the Perkins Evaluation and Review, which our students still obtained 800 of these certifications. An additional 554 were earned that are not recognized by CCMR, including bloodborne pathogens, first aid, AED, CPR, OSHA 10-hour safety, and other certifications that, even though they're not recognized by the state, we still feel that they're imperative for preparing our students for the industry. So you can see some of those numbers of what we earned there. We also had a list of new certifications that were reported for the first time in LISD, including Adobe Certified Associate, API and AWS Welding, as well as an OSHA forklift certification that was offered last year, on top of our basic structure fire protection and emergency medical technician certifications that were already mentioned. So anytime we launch a new career center, there are plenty of opportunities to expand our CTE certification offerings. We're adding the following certifications for the first time in Lewisville ISD due to Tech West. The NCCER core curriculum is being offered in ag mechanics, electrical, HVAC, and wood manufacturing. NCCER electrical level 1 and 2 in the electrical program and the HVAC program, along with refrigerant handling in HVAC and ServSafe Manager to all of our culinary students. And we are also adding ASC from the collision side as well for non-structural, structural, and paint and refinishing. All of these are on the A through F accountability list. So already looking at 21 and 22, we will be offering the following industry-based certifications due to our 2-year programs. So the Certified Vet Assistant will be offered through our Vet Tech program, Cisco Certified Network Associates in the 2nd year of the networking program and cybersecurity, and NCCER Electrical and HVAC levels 3 and 4 will be offered next year as well. One of the strongest priorities we have, if not the main priority we have this year in CTE, is to continue to build our business advisory boards. We've seen the impact that has having strong industry partnerships, and last year we were able to add 4 new advisory boards with animal science, vet tech, the building trades with electrical and HVAC, cybersecurity, and floral design and horticulture. What was pivotal about these advisory boards is they help us really tie a bow around a lot of the programs that were being installed at Tech West. So anytime we had last minute things that we were looking at regarding equipment or facilities or anything like that, they were right alongside with us, making sure that we were in line with what the industry offers. So last year, we were able to present on talking about a CT program review document that was going to be coming. And so throughout the year, we had 4 meetings of CT teachers and campus administrators that developed the CT program guide. We wanted this to help us define consistent expectations and milestones, as well as celebrate those programs that are setting the standard for an excellent CT program. So you each should have a document, this document inside your handout. You'll see that we have items such as career exploration, involvement in career and technical student organizations, industry-based certifications, advisory boards, as we mentioned, and many other things. And all four cornerstones are represented in this document. That's how we structured and outlined everything in our CT program guide. So looking ahead, continuing to look at this year, in 2017, the priorities were set for CT improvements, with the number 1 priority being the new career center that addressed the wait lists, modernized facility and technology, and course expansion, specifically mentioning culinary, health science, EMT, and vet tech. By the completion of Tech West, we were able to expand the culinary program into a state-of-the-art facility, as well as implemented a vet tech program. We've also expanded health science by adding an additional teaching unit in 2018, and Lewisville High School added the EMT program as a part of the dual credit firefighter program. So all of those programs that were mentioned were able to specifically be addressed, as well as looking at the wait lists. So if you look up at the chart or on your PowerPoint, you'll see the blue line represents where the wait lists were in 2016 and 17. the red line looks at where they are in 2020 and 21, and these are pre-fall numbers. So this is our initial spring enrollment. We felt like that gave us more of a true guideline of where we were on wait list because of the differentiation of August enrollment. So looking at that, graphic design decreased from 64 to 12 students. Video game design decreased from 56 to 22. Cosmetology, we were able to eliminate the wait list from 27. Medical assisting, 7 to 3. We did have a couple that grew. Architecture did grow to 17. However, the two campuses that do not offer architecture do not have a wait list. And so the two campuses that do not offer it on their campus as an individual course, as well as welding, has increased from 45 to 58. I do believe the welding wait list is probably due to the success that those students had last year doing certifications for the first time, but those are obviously things that we're going to continue to monitor as we're planning out programs. So looking briefly at the fall numbers, we wanted to take a look at where we are in person as well as virtual. So we have approximately 4,500 CTE course enrollments in in-person learning and approximately 3,200 course enrollments in virtual learning. These are just our fall numbers. So looking at our fall and spring enrollment last year, we had 10,262. So that kind of gives you a judge of where we are just counting halfway through the year. Obviously, we'll see where everything looks at the 9-week point and the 18-week point of what our enrollment looks like. But it's very favorable for where we are this time of year. Some definite exciting news. This was something that we mentioned last year in the CTE update, was that we would be exploring opportunities for expansion of Incubator EDU. And after a successful launch of Incubator at LHS in 2018-19, with the partnership of the Colony Chamber, the Colony High School has been selected as our second Incubator campus, and it will be launching next fall. So I'll be working with that campus this year to identify spacing and teaching units and everything that goes inside of launching an Incubator program. I know that the Colony is very excited about this. They are hoping to announce a grant, I believe, next week that will fund this. And as soon as we have more information on that, we'll definitely pass it along. But they're very excited about the new development in the Colony and partnering with us. So like I said earlier, just thank you for your continued support. We definitely enjoyed bringing y'all through the new facility and hoping y'all had a great time. I'm glad we didn't get stuck in the walk-in cooler as we were able to give y'all the tour through there. And any questions y'all have, please let me know.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Huber? Angie?
You can do one or
Yeah, let's do a couple, and then if we need to, we'll come back around.
what? Define a couple.
Two.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the first one is what the internship we recently, I guess, had one with Mercedes last year. Is that still ongoing, or do we have internships for our kids through dealerships and other things?
We do currently have internships at some of our sites. I don't know specifically how many, but I can follow through and see how many are currently still active going on.
Yeah, I would like to know what that looks like. And then what does Tech East and Tech West look like as far as differentiation? Because I know, a lot of the key was to not have the kids driving over from Flower Mound all the way over to Tech East and, vice versa. So do they mirror each other in the classes they offer, or what does that look like?
They do not mirror each other fully. We do have some that duplicate. Our two previously highest wait list, the cosmetology is offered at both, the health science is offered at both. Until you get to the capstone courses, that's where you have to separate one or the other. Those are the only two that currently do mirror each other right now, especially in our larger labs that are specifically catered to one. They're specific to one of the two campuses. But as we start talking about the expansion of Tech East, we'll definitely continue to look at those wait lists and the things that travel may be impacting
So are we still
enrollment.
having a lot of that? Travel to the other campuses?
Yes, we do currently still have some that have to go from say, the Colony over to West or Flower Mound over to, say, particular architecture over at Tech East.
That's my two.
Okay, Ms. Lasan?
I didn't even know that was two. Good job.
Oh, well, then, no.
So the advisory boards that you spoke of, have we ever seen like who, not necessarily who's on them maybe, but which businesses are helping you out? I just think it'd be nice to see that.
Absolutely. We can get that list for you.
Not necessarily who they are, but just, who's helping you out. So.
And we can not only get you the list of advisory board members, but also we have some that may not necessarily have an advisory board yet. They haven't established that yet, but we do have some strong partnerships. I can share both of those lists with you if you like.
Okay, that'd be great. And I guess we're looking forward to y'all hosting, I guess it's like a dual chamber lunch, right, in a few weeks at Tech West.
Yes, ma'am.
September 23rd.
It'll be fun to show off that new facility. So.
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Thanks, Jason. So I just want to go back to clarifying Mrs. Cox's question. Were you talking about just for automotive internships? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because you have internships in a lot of different areas, right?
Correct.
It's a big deal because a number of years ago we had, 8, 9 kids get hired making good money. I would also like to see the list of advisors. You think about A&M has a point of view on vet stuff. Tech has a view of it. Those are sometimes competing or complementary, and so it would be easy. The Red Raiders looking here, but it would be of interest to us. So that's not a question. I think it's a reiteration. Mm-hmm. I would say I was at Chief Tittle's visitation. I don't know if Mrs. Clark is here, but I was in line for a long time, and it was amazing to me as I met people and they found out I was on the board. The number of retired fighters that spoke about, I think I shared this with you maybe, the Firefighter Academy and how big a deal that was. And I think that's just a great statement because that was a celebration of a phenomenal man who was an LHS graduate and just the pride that his people had about the relationship with LISD and what that ultimately become. And so I just want to say it publicly, what it ultimately became or is. Say it publicly. The other thing is, you may not be aware of this, but a couple years ago, Adrian had done a presentation that I think is worth saying every time we get an update, which talks about a student who gets a certification, let's say cosmetology or auto mechanic or electrical engineering, etc., and gets an associate's degree, has a higher propensity of making more money over their lifetime than, and I'm kind of paraphrasing what I recall. I just think it's good to remind the public of that when we do those updates, right? So your presentation was great, and you guys are doing a great job. I think that, right? And I'm excited to see,
sir.
Things on the 23rd or whatever. But I think, I was in a conversation with a family this weekend, and it's kind of like, well, what do kids really learn in school, right? These are high-performing parents. Well, they learn a lot. Do they really? I actually use CTE as an example.
I appreciate that.
Kids coming out of CTE, remember when we were at that luncheon and those 9 kids, 8 kids, however many kids, we talked about how much money they were going to make. I think those kids learned something. I think the kids in some of the internships that I'm aware of would say they're learning something. And so CTE is an area where we need to continue to, while it does say college, career, and military readiness, that career aspect is really essential. We picked all the pathways, I think, maybe not one, I can't remember, but I'm just glowing about what we're doing across both campuses and what we can do for more students who can help put themselves through college, through some certification that they get, or enhance or accelerate their college experience because of what they did with us. So keep up the good work. I mean, we love the tour. It's a great building. Kudos to all of us for that building, but especially our construction guys and you guys, Randy and Jason and y'all. I mean, it's a fantastic facility, and it's going to produce a lot of opportunities for kids to have a good livelihood in the future. So
Absolutely. Thank you.
Ms. Hassett?
I am also very excited about what's going on in CTE. My question was also advisory boards, but different question. You mentioned you had other advisory boards you would like to start. could we have a list of we have community members that we know of, and we'd be happy to help coerce other people that we know to join the wonderful things that are going on with our CTE programs.
Absolutely. We can definitely do that.
And we'd be happy to coerce our friends. And then for the wait lists, welding is up dramatically then. Is that also because of limited space in welding, more kids are interested, or is that anticipation of next year's?
It's currently because we're basically maxed out of space on that facility, and I think because of more interest, because of the success of that program. I mean, that's without really digging into it. That's my guess, but it's definitely something we can continue to take a look at when we're looking at expanding.
I mean, one of the big changes recently has been the dual credit, and I know you mentioned that, but I think the dual credit's causing an uptick in interest as well that we didn't have when we first presented back at the Facilities Advisory Committee about wait list. And so it's an interesting change about what dual credit being offered, because we weren't quite for sure when we started with welding, what would we see? So that could be it as well.
But we're also limited in space, so we really can't truly address
let me say that Tech West has much more welding space than Del Jackson. Del Jackson, the limit on class sizes was, I believe, 12 or 15 max, and that was all the welding stations they have. And I think we, if I'm not mistaken, we close to double that as far as welding spaces. So, I think there's just now more interest in welding, which is a great thing.
But then what's the solution? More classes, more students in the class, another teacher?
I think probably the quickest solution, and you have to remember what Jason said, is these are numbers of kids who signed up for course request, and we needed to compare apples to apples, and sometimes a course request doesn't actually, mean that course fits in my schedule.
Correct.
So, I mean, I think we have to be careful about overreacting on the numbers. I just think, as he said, we've got to continue to monitor that to where when it's time for us to build Tech East or expand Tech East, we can make sure what programs we need to expand there.
And I would just be interested in updates on the wait lists as the year has progressed.
Absolutely.
How they go. Thank you.
Ms. Prosnick?
Dr. Rogers stole one of my questions, which is what was going to happen at Tech East. I will say I want to thank the voters for passing the 2017 bond. If it's not us that did it, it's the voters that did it. And I want to thank the community, and I hope that they get an opportunity to see the really state-of-the-art facility. I think it says something when you can work on what people who make their living doing it are working on. I think it makes it a more seamless transition to a career and not just a hobby.
Right.
I do want to know, since we are looking at Tech East, the expansion of Tech East, that's the other part of the 2017 bond, are we looking at including energy, since that's the only cluster currently we don't have? I'm curious if that is something that we're looking at, and what it would take, and what it would it take to include that cluster.
So since we're still wrapping up the Tech West and kind of tying a bow on that, I've already mentally and personally started preparing certain things, just looking at all of the CTE offerings individually, course what we don't offer, looking at programs of study, seeing where we are. That way, when that time does come, we can pretty much open up the books and have a true self-audit and say, where are we? What do we need to expand on? What do we need to bring in new? So I definitely think that is something we'll take a serious look at, because it would be nice to say, hey, we're offering 14 out of 14 of the career clusters, but I also don't want us to do something just because it looks good on the PowerPoint if it's not truly what's going to be beneficial to our kids in the area. I would love it if it works out that way, and hopefully it does. But we'll definitely take a look at all of those factors.
And then this is just a personal note. I really enjoyed seeing the stoles on the cosmetology students who had received their state certifications, because I think it celebrated their accomplishment in getting a state certification.
Right.
And in my opinion, they are the most important people in the world because they keep me blonde. I was wondering if we were going to be able to offer that to our welding students who will be receiving that associate's degree, or our firefighters as well, to celebrate them, and because it's an accomplishment.
Absolutely. We actually had that conversation, I believe it was last week, just talking about what are the small things that we can do to say, hey, you did it, because it's huge. It is a huge accomplishment. So absolutely, I think those are definitely things we can look at.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And let me see. I had the energy question because I don't want to pass up an opportunity if that's something. And have any of our neighboring districts or anybody we know of already opened that up, that we could kind of,
My guess is
lurk and watch? Yeah.
My guess is that pathway is for West Texas and some of those areas,
Okay.
Houston area, oil and gas industry.
Petroleum engineering, things like
So-
that.
Okay.
So we probably need the price of a barrel of gas, of oil
Yeah.
to go up to about
And that was
60
that was my other question under the energy is, would it actually fit a need here in our community? And so, I mean, I'm sure you're thinking about that. Do we follow through with our students once they've become employed? Do we reach out to them and ask them to come back and speak to some of the students? And I think there's nothing more powerful than one of success coming back, because no matter how excited you are about being in a program, sometimes I think just hearing it from somebody who's already done it can be powerful in getting you over those little hurdles. You remember that he did it, I can do it too.
Right.
And so just making sure that we don't pass up those opportunities. I would love for all those firefighters to be employed by our members of our community.
Absolutely.
And so those are the easy ones for them and our cosmetologist also, but then also some of those that I'm super interested in cybersecurity, because probably I know nothing about it, but it just intrigues me to no end. And I think that this generation more than any is going to be powerful in that field. And so and I think I went over my two. Ms. Cox, did you have more? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so one of my other questions is on the Ag Barn. I think I kind of asked you this as the tour, and thank you very much for giving the tour. It is
Absolutely.
an outstanding facility, as all the board members have alluded to. So what are we doing this year? Do we have cows, goats, pigs there, or what are we? Because obviously they're probably not showing or having.
So, number one, right now they are wrapping up the ag expansion. So the ag barn expansion, that'll be within the next few weeks. But we do have some cattle out there who have successfully watched out the construction. So we have 7 cattle, I want to say, right now that are currently out there. And we've been working with the members, the parents in the Parents and Friends Club, and the parents of the students, because they've asked for our guidance of, hey, what do shows look like? And we've been very transparent with them to say, right now we know the information that we have today, and some parents I think are going to continue to move forward with the funding and purchase an animal and put them in a barn, and we'll absolutely open up the barn for any animal that wants to go ahead and show. Whether or not they're going to be able to show this year is, I mean, obviously remains to be seen, but it's still an active barn, and we've got some live animals out there, and hopefully it'll be very full in the next few months.
That's great. I love that. The leadership that you see these students learning from taking care of an animal and the responsibility that goes with it, to me is outstanding. And going to watch these, young adults talk about their animals, I mean, you just see the passion that they exert from it. So I love that program.
Absolutely.
My other question is about, to go back to the internships. The high schools, they always do or the colleges come in and the different, internships and all that. Do we do something specific at the Career Center where we would have a day where maybe companies could come in and, get to see our students that are in our program, that they might have possible internships after college?
So they do different types of career days at the Career Centers. There are some events that I kind of have on my radar. Obviously, it may be on a hold right now, but there basically a lunch and learn event where they come in, they learn about our programs, they get an opportunity to meet our students face to face, to see them kind of present in action, and really to get them directly involved and potentially align some internships at that time. So those are some things that I would like to do a little bit more and a little bit more specific. So instead of just opening it up to all the careers, you go ahead and you specifically designate it. This is the day for automotive tech students or for automotive collision students. But those are definitely things that are on our radar of events to offer.
Ms. Hill, I just had 2 more questions, or do you want me to wait?
Just go ahead.
Okay, so Dr. Rogers, this is for you. So the incubator program is one of my favorite programs. I love that the kids come up with these designs. So I see that the colony, they ponied up the money. So kudos to the colony for doing that. So what does a typical program cost, so we can make it known that we can get it at Marcus and Flower Mound and Hebron, and see what sponsor we might want to get?
Yeah, and I don't have that exactly, but I think the program overall costs about $50,000 to get off the ground, and really more important, it takes about 100 very committed volunteers, 75 to 100, and so we pitched the idea, and when I say we, I'm talking about Bill Lee and group, to Rotaries and chambers on both sides of our district. And, really the city of the colony and the colony chamber stepped up. We were prepared if both sides were indicated they were ready, we would have launched too. But, we believe that we will launch another program in the near future, but it does take a substantial commitment, not just money, but I'm talking about
Time.
Mentors and coaches and so on.
And that's a
so,
full year program.
Yeah. So.
It's a great program. I'm
It is.
excited. I'm excited for the colony. It's going to be fantastic. So my last question is, I love the fact that you, or that we have open rooms at the Career Center to allow for expansion. What does that look like from the district? Are we interviewing companies or bringing companies in to, because we have Bell Helicopter, we have all different types of companies in the Metroplex.
As far as when we're looking at expanding those
Right,
programs.
and what that program might look like.
Right. One thing we'll do is we'll continue to just watch out for what other districts around us are doing, watch the employment data. We have a great contact with Interlink. Kenny Slocum gives us phenomenal data of what the career outlooks look like. So we'll continue to watch those. And another thing that we've talked about is we don't know what this COVID situation is going to do for different industries and industries that are being developed because of this situation. So it's an exciting thing to look at, but I know as we're still trying to finalize some things, some programs that are already in that building to figure out what those next steps look like. So I think that's something else. And I know we keep talking about the Tech East expansion. When we look at that, we can say, hey, what do we still need to expand, but it may not necessarily fit here. Okay, maybe their home really will be over at Tech West. So we do have some really neat opportunities to see kind of where things fit. But it's definitely not just a process that we take lightly. We'll hopefully get some good student data as far as some student interest, advisory board interest, some companies be around the table. So we'll bring some task force together and see what that looks like.
That's great.
So, Ms. Cox, I think a great example is if you remember 2 or 3 years ago when we were talking about Tech West or a new career center, we talked about avionics and really creating a program since we're so close to DFW. And that's certainly still on the table as we potentially expand, Tech, when we expand Tech East. But hindsight's 2020. I'm sort of glad we didn't do that because, all these airlines are laying off tens of thousands of people, and according to a lot of experts, that's not going to recover overnight. And so those are the kind of things we'll continue to pay attention to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lasan, do you have anything else? Mr. Miller?
I just had an idea to Mrs. Cox's point about like Bell Helicopter. So I don't even know if this fits with one of the clusters, but just a thought. Ericsson moved to Lewisville. Samsung's in Plano. We're doing the cybersecurity, et cetera. With the world of 5G, which Ericsson would play in, and the Internet of Things, that seems to be an area where we could easily. there's a lot of Internet of Things on people in this room right now, right? Everything's a sensor. And would seem to be an area where, with our proficiency in technology, generally speaking, if there were a cluster, given the partnership like that, and even when you look at Tech Titans, bringing in an AT&T, who's, we're already using their FirstNet and the same group at AT&T would help with IoT and 5G would come from the group that's doing FirstNet, the emergency services. So,
Right.
Is there a cluster that might fit in?
Well, 100% of the jobs actually do fall into the 14 career clusters, so because they're directly aligned with the Texas workforce data, so would have to narrow it down and figure out where it fits, but I guarantee we can find somewhere where if a company came in that was strong enough that wanted to partner with us, we had the space, we were able to hire the teaching units, I guarantee we could find a place that it would fit within CTE.
Ms. Hassett, more questions? Ms. Prosnick?
I'm all good.
Okay. And my only last thing, two things, because I would like to know the board members. I think that that's important for us, because if somebody is volunteering time to the district, when we're out in the community, we need to be able to recognize that and to thank them personally. And so I am interested in knowing who those board members are. I'd also like, in actually talking about those advisory boards, to have just a little bit of knowledge about them and how often they meet and what is the expectations of those that are on the board, so that if I'm talking to somebody and I say, well, I don't really know when they meet and I don't know what you do, and it's hard to get somebody on board with me and to get somebody as excited as I am without having enough knowledge to be able to share with them. And so if we could just have some of that information, that would be amazing to me. And my other thing is, are we continuing to look at the integration of our special ed students within our programs?
Absolutely.
I know that we've had some in ag, and they have found a place that they've never found before in an accomplishment and feeling that this was something they've done, but also that with that expansion of the hospitality, there are opportunities there, and I just hope we don't miss those for those kids. And so just wanted to make that statement and make sure that that was on the table at some point in time.
Definitely.
And
Ms.
so-
Sells, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We do recognize our business partners. Both Lindsay and Jason sort of overlap, and of course we didn't have that event this August, but we will continue to have that event to recognize both business partners through CTE.
Well, and
other
sometimes it's
business
just a
partners.
matter of fact, if I need a special service or something, sometimes I will make a decision based on somebody that I know that works as a partner with our district, and I would love to share that with my friends, but if I don't have that information, then sometimes I won't go a certain path. So,
Absolutely. We'll definitely get a
anyway.
list for you.
Okay, perfect.
Absolutely.
I would love that. So thank you so much
Absolutely. Thank
for
you
the
all.
presentation.
Thank you, Jason.
All right.
All right, so not only do I appreciate Jason presenting, but also with Miss Seeley sitting over there. She did so much work in helping getting Tech West off the ground, as well as Mr. Cooper was transitioning into that role, so I can't help but say thank you to her. And then, of course, Mr. Gilbreth is snuck in the room and sitting back there as well, so we appreciate him so much. All right, so Ms. Heinzman's going to come up, and we're going to spend a few minutes just sharing a little bit more information with you all about the additional days school year opportunity that we had. I know I've written about it in weekly updates and things to keep you updated, but we thought it was time, and of course Dr. Rogers asked, and so you always say yes, that we will provide specific information about this opportunity. And of course, stealing Susan away from Mill Street, we appreciate her being willing to tackle this for us. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and then at the end we'll answer questions, of course.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Dr. Rogers and the board. I am excited about this program that I have the opportunity to work on. Sad to leave Mill Street for sure, but I think I've gotten through my withdrawals finally. So this is an overview of the additional days school year. It's through House Bill 3. It is optional for districts to do this program. And so I'll go through a little bit of the purpose and some of the components of it and tell you where we're at right now and where we're going, okay? So the first slide is just a little bit about what ADSI is, and that's the acronym that they
You have
use.
the clicker.
I have the clicker, sorry. Okay. There were 3 components to this part of the ADSI. One was the voluntary summer learning, which there are districts in the state who are working on that part. The intersessional calendar, requirement of that is to have a year-round calendar, but the summer learning and the intersessional calendar are not for all students at a school. It's mainly for a small select group. The full year redesign is what we are working on this year, and so I'll go through a little bit about that. TEA, if this planning process goes through and we decide to adopt this idea, will pay 50% of the attendance rate for the additional days. It's adding 30 days to the school calendar, up to 30 days. So we would earn 50% of our attendance rate, and it would not go against our regular average daily attendance. So the purpose of ADSI, based on TEA's idea of this concept, is to add additional days to the school calendar, mainly to the front end of the calendar, to maximize learning time, to target all students on campus, create a consistent program across 210 days. So you wouldn't do something necessarily separate on the additional days. You would have time to spread out your curriculum through the 210 days. The kids would stay with their regular teacher throughout that whole time, instead of like summer programs where they have a different teacher that they go with for a few weeks in the summer. Increase teacher efficacy through collaboration, professional learning, where they can hone in on their skills, learn more from each other, and really have that time to build in to learn more about their students and the instruction. And also have time to data collect and evaluate progress for the students. And one of the main reasons is to eliminate the summer slide. And that seems to be coming up a lot because of COVID. We're going to see a larger gap for our students. So this graph is something that TEA put out to show, and this is not for all students, but on average, a lot of the students, compared from the middle class students to the low income students. Every summer you see a drop, and teachers usually have to spend quite a few weeks reviewing and getting kids back up to speed before you move on. So our students who live in lower income families, we tend to see a greater drop. And so then the catch-up is harder. And so each year when you have that drop, this graph is showing that it could be, for some students, up to 3 grade levels difference between our kids in 5th grade. The ADSI days, if we were to implement those 30 days, we could go from the minimum minutes of instruction right now, which is 75,600, which that's the minimum for the state. We are actually higher than that, but we could go up to, or even a little more, to 95,000 minutes for these students if we added in those additional days. So there are 3 priorities that, as we're planning this process, we focus on. One is for the teachers, the teacher planning time, collaboration time, and it's really to reimagine the teaching job. It's not just adding extra days and doing the same thing like we always have done. So it's really an opportunity for us to think outside of the box, think about how to do our master schedule differently, and really learn more as professionals, and then bringing that to the students. The other two sections, it says brain breaks on the top, but that's really for teachers and students. The first part is accelerating and enriching learning, and then the other one is to strengthen the whole child. So reimagining teachers, as I mentioned, collaborations through PLCs. It also gives time for observations. I know we tried to implement peer observations when I was at College Street, so teachers could learn from each other. This gives time in the day or through the week to have opportunities for that, or to have coaches come in, observe, and then have time to actually sit and go through the observations to get feedback. It's another way to also improve the workday for professional learning and more breaks for the teachers. For accelerating and enriching learning, we definitely will have time to really align our standards and have more time to teach it, because we will take the curriculum that our teachers are teaching now, but have additional time to spend on teaching it, to reinforce, to have more differentiated instruction, to hit those struggling students and the advanced students, to move them even further. Also, it gives us an opportunity to bring in enrichment classes. It could be clubs. It could be additional field trips. For example, fine arts field trips that students may not have the opportunity or the background knowledge of going to an opera or to the symphony. This allows us to take some of those instructional days and takes our students to field trips that they may not ever have the opportunity to go to otherwise. And another part of that is to build partnerships with local organizations so that maybe come in and teach some type of dancing or things like that. So to get our community involved with clubs and enrichment. And the last part is to strengthen the whole child. It's dedicated some of our resources to more time to build in that climate and the culture, to really spend time with where you're not rushing to do a morning meeting. Sometimes, we want to, things come up in morning meetings with our kids, and the teachers have to speed them up because we got to get going. So this really gives us time to dedicate to the students and their needs. It also gives us time to have those brain breaks, have the enrichment in the clubs, to integrate and explicitly teach the social emotional skills integrated with our standards as well, when our teachers have time to plan it. And then have time for intensive Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports for those students who need it. So in the spring, Dr. Rapp wrote a grant
With a lot of help.
With Ms. Godby and Ms. Litchfield are in the room too.
Yes. To try to get some funds to use to plan this year, because we know the better planning you have, it can be implemented with fidelity. So we were awarded a $200,000 grant, and there were a few requirements. One was to hire a full-time project manager, which is my position. And another part of the grant was to contract with a TEA-approved technical assistance vendor. And that vendor will help with the design and implementation process, that planning process. That item, to approve that vendor, will be on next Monday nights as a consent item. So the vendor will help us with that. And then in December, I have a deadline to submit our first round of our planning. Everything that we're going to be doing, I'm going to turn it in, and if it's approved, then we are eligible for more funds to continue working with the vendors. So we'll have the opportunity to apply for additional funds so that we can continue working with this vendor through the rest of the planning process, because we'll start out and then there'll be times to really fine tune and get to the nitty gritty of this is what we're going to do, and then go try to start that in June or July. So this is a timeline. This is a few things involved that every one of those categories plus a lot more is going into this planning year. Just to reiterate, the $200,000 grant, those funds are specifically for like my salary and the vendor. So that won't come out of LISD funds for this year. So this is the timeline for this planning year based on this grant that we've received. We are identifying a steering committee. We have a smaller planning committee. So Mrs. Litchfield and Ms. Godby, the principals, and a few other people from different departments are going to be on our smaller committee. And then we are also identifying a steering committee that has parents, community members, hopefully maybe a couple of students, a student from each group, teachers. So it'll be a bigger group so that when we have things to present and get feedback on, we'll have that group that will meet on a monthly basis. We are working on drafts for the master calendar, and hopefully in October we'll try to fine-tune that and have a couple options to have our steering committee look at and decide on a calendar. Then moving into October, November, and these are fluid, but these are mainly when we're going to be starting some of this stuff. We'll start our staffing plan, because when you're adding 30 days to the school calendar, that means everyone will need to work 30 extra days. So we'll definitely need a lot of support from employee services so that they can help us with how do we structure it, how do we structure the contracts, all of that. None of this has taken place yet. That's in the future what we're going to be working on. We'll have some budget adjustments we'll need to make, knowing that we are receiving 50% of the funds for those extra days. Then we'll need to work with our finance department on how do we make up the difference. So we're going to be working on all of that coming up soon. We'll work with the curriculum, learning and teaching on a master schedule, how to spread out our curriculum and have time in those days. We'll also work with professional learning, because we'll use some of those extra times for additional professional learning that can be really embedded in the day for our teachers. And then moving into December through March, after I'll have the first round of information that I submit to TEA, and then moving in past that is when we really start honing in on our staffing plan, our recruitment, determine any professional learning we may need to do, operations, busing, child nutrition, custodial staff. All of those pieces will start to fine-tune and figure out what needs we have and what we need to do about those. And then also just enrollment. So we'll decide, is it going to be open for transfers for families who want to come for year-round school? Is basically what this is, redesigning the school to for those students, or the ones who just really don't want to do that. So we'll be talking with student services about how do we go about that process. And then April, May is when we submit our final plan to TEA. April 1st is the deadline, and then we'll find out if it's approved and move forward. Finally, just getting everything ready, having all of our staff in place, and then with the goal of starting school into June July. It just depends on how we can work the calendar out and how many actual days we add. So we have up to 30, but that doesn't mean we are required to add 30. So that's our projection for that. I have already mentioned most of these, the impact on the district departments. So this is just kind of like a overview of some of the needs that we'll have from these departments. Communications is not on here, but we'll definitely need communications to help us get the word out, get the surveys out to families. We'll have summits where we can have open discussions and questions. We'll have focus groups for all of the different stakeholder groups. So all of that will start once we get our vendor on board, and I can start working pretty heavily with them to get everything planned out. They'll help us with all of that. So the main goal of this is to increase teacher efficacy, have them really feeling like they know what they're doing and they are professionals and they have the time to spend on learning and collaborating with their peers. We'll increase our student achievement by spreading the curriculum out, have brain breaks, have that free time to have clubs. And just from past experience with at my former schools, having those clubs, it's like it feels amazing because it's a brain break, but yet it's something that they enjoy. So that's exciting. And then just to increase the positive culture and climate that's already being started at the schools, but have time for that.
And the two schools that we're are under consideration and part of this process are Lewisville Elementary and Rockbrook Elementary. And so this exploration process will be a huge part of their targeted improvement plans. Of course, those will be coming back before you as well because we've got all those processes still rolling. So, this presented a unique opportunity to really reimagine, as Ms. Heinzman said, how you do school for some of our students who are our most at-risk learners. And so to have the opportunity to receive the grant funds to do exploration is really, how could you pass up that money to explore a new way to serve kids? And I know Dr. Rogers, has talked about for a while, how do you staff schools differently that serve some of our most at-risk learners? How do you think about the school day differently? How do you, provide learning in the summer that doesn't look like, he's here, I'm acting like he's not sitting right there. He could say all these things. But anyway, when the opportunity presented itself, it just seemed so crazy to not try to apply for the funds to do this research. And Ms. Godby, Ms. Litchfield, Mr. Guy, Ms. Valdez have been amazing. When you think about balancing everything we have going on with COVID and also thinking about trying to reimagine how we might do school and if that's even a possibility. So this would be one of many conversations with you all about this because obviously we would never submit a plan to TEA without the support of you all. Right. So I think that's all I was trying to remember to say here at the end, and we'll be happy to take any questions.
And just for your information, out of all of the districts in Texas, there are 11 districts who are going through this planning process to be like the leaders and try to pilot this to show a different way of doing school.
Could we get a list of that 11?
I have them if you'd like them. I can send them to you later.
Can you just tell us what they are?
Yeah. Aldine, Alif, Austin, Crowley, which is, I think, the closest district to us, El Paso, Pawnee, Raymondville, San Marcos, Southside, and Spring.
Were we one of 11 that were chosen, and that's all they had was 11, or do you know?
I'm not sure.
It was a competitive process, so I have no doubt there were school districts that applied that did not get selected, but I don't know how many applicants they had.
Questions?
Let's start over here this time, Ms. Prosnick.
Okay, so my big question, because I went to the TA website, and shockingly I could not find the answer. What exactly does a technical assistance provider do?
I would say that they would be considered like a consulting firm.
So they've done this before? I mean, that's where I couldn't find any depth, if
Yeah,
you will.
so these assistance providers have experience either in helping districts in other TEA, like maybe math innovation zone
Right.
work,
Yes.
blended learning, grant work. They have experience with helping school districts conduct processes that help them reimagine, whether depending on what the grant might be. So that's why the technical assistance part, there's different categories of assistance.
Yes, one was the design and implementation, which was required.
Right.
And then optional ones were for scheduling and for finance and budget. But once you get with the design and implementation vendor, they incorporate a lot of that in their support for us. And we have a lot of experts in our district that can help us with those two. But the design and implementation part is the requirement for the grant.
Which would make sense that that's the requirement, because that's really the hardest part, is really leading the focus groups, the summits, what are the considerations you should take into account in terms of getting feedback correctly to even know if what you're thinking about designing is something that would be welcomed by your community or not. So I think from that perspective, it makes sense they would require that one.
So can I ask my second? Okay. So my understanding is that the grant funds will run dry at the end of December. So
Pretty much, yes.
So beyond December, if we do not receive grant funding, it will be on us to pay for I'm assuming the technical assistance provider.
That's the only part, yes.
Your salary is covered for the year. Don't worry, your salary's covered for the year. But we would be responsible then to pay for the technical assistance?
No, we would apply for the additional funds through the grant. It's like an addendum to the grant.
But it's not
that we can apply.
guaranteed. My question
It's not guaranteed, but we'll make sure that we.
Yeah, and I think, Ms. Prosnick, that's a great question. We know no grant's guaranteed.
Right.
So,
Right.
Certainly this is dependent on the grant, in my opinion. So, as Dr. Rapp said, by us getting the $200,000 grant, at least was some seed money to explore the option. Why
Absolutely.
not? But, if the grant funds in the next session dry up or whatever, we'll be looking for some other idea.
Yeah.
And I think the thought too is the heavy lift really, at least according to their initial timeline, is in the fall.
Yeah.
So I think they're thinking, you need to expend those monies for your technical assistance by December. Really, once you've done that heavy lift with your research processes, you should either be able to continue that work to get your plan ready in the spring on your own, or decide you need to put your own money towards continued assistance.
Ms. Hassett?
I also have several, just asking two, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Come back.
But there'll be several rounds.
Yes, I have several. Oh, shocking. So, scope of use. Right now, we're just starting with the two proposed campuses. Are we going to possibly increase it to more later? Or is there any plans on increasing the scope to more?
So we definitely, when we wrote the grant, talked about the fact that if these plans were to move forward and become reality, that these schools would be possibly setting the stage for what it would look like to bring other schools to scale. That you're not just limiting this only to Lewisville and Rockbrook. It would just depend on how it goes, and these two schools give us the opportunity to do that research, either in terms of moving forward with it, one, and then if they do move forward with it, what are the results, and does that make it something we should scale to other schools in the district as well?
And I would just say, though, that we won't be able to judge that in 1 year. I mean,
Right.
It's going to take some time to get the results from those two schools before you can determine if it's making a difference or not. So I don't think if everything went the way we'd like for it to, and Lewisville Elementary and Rockbrook get started next school year, that we'd be looking to start two more the next year. I just don't think we have the data to prove, hey, this is making a difference or not yet.
Okay. The second is about the stakeholder engagement. So I'm assuming that includes parents.
Absolutely.
Parents,
Teachers.
teachers, students, community members.
So teachers with district contracts and how we would do that, and professional learning days within the 30 days or outside the 30 days, or
We're going to look at how to redesign that, so it could be embedded throughout the year differently, too.
and then how would you contact the parents within that school to make sure that they're understanding and that'd be a huge change. And what about the parents also couldn't, if they didn't want to stay, but they really couldn't provide transportation to another school? I mean, there's
a lot of considerations that we're going to have to look at.
That's a lot of the ifs that the technical group has to help her and the schools
That's
work
what they're
through. But
doing.
absolutely questions that we have to answer is if a parent at Rockbrook doesn't want their child to be part of 210 day, then what are our options for that parent? The same way we, gave options to STEM Academy parents that didn't want to stay in STEM. I mean, so those are the kind of things that her and the group will have to work through.
a
But
lot
you're
of our
absolutely-
parents in the Rockbrook and Lewisville Elementary don't have the options that some of their other parents do for transportation.
Yeah, I just say that those are all questions that we will answer before and bring before y'all. I mean, I don't have the answer yet, but that's why the groups, we're going to ask to hire the technical support group to help Susan work through this.
And advantages besides the instructional piece and so forth is meals all, most of the summer, and daycare. So it's interesting when I've explained this to others, that's the first thing they're like, well, that would be great as a parent, So, but we want to get feedback and really listen to what they want. And knowing, through this whole COVID thing, we've worked so hard on how do we contact parents? How do we make sure they know how to get technology, how to do those things? So I have no doubt that Ms. Valdez and Mr. Guy have really done a great job of that communication already. So hopefully we can just move right in with getting their input in different ways.
Mr. Miller?
So I think you did great work, Susan and the team, but let me just tell you, I'm dubious about this. I feel like this is Little Red Riding Hood, and the legislature is wearing the cape, or the commissioner. Once again, this makes me feel like District of Innovation, that there's a sociology experiment, and we're going to put that before school districts, and you've got to do certain things, and you'll get some money, but you won't get all the money, which is interesting because if the science really supports it, you would think that TEA, to make its numbers of education, the performance of education in Texas robust, would actually fund it. So I think we've got to remember who is giving us access to this. All given to us by the same group that delivered District of Innovation, which is not even discussed hardly at all anymore. And now we're talking about this. So for me, I would be, in fact, I couldn't agree to fund anything next week without some type of hypotheticals. For example, hypothetically, we would be looking at 75% adoption in each campus, which means that Ms. Valdez and Mr. Guy would have to work this number of days. These are the hypotheticals around contracts. The legislature's put this before us in House Bill 3. Certainly they've thought about the contracts, so we could run some numbers on if we were to have 75% of the students based on ratios, this is what it would cost. It just seems to me it's spend money, go to a next step, spend money, go to a next step. And ultimately, it comes down to this. And this is going to come out of board governance, right? What outcomes are you willing to commit to? And they have to be in real numbers. Because if we can't say in 2 years we're going to have this level of performance, I think we need to cut bait. Just because the legislature gave us this doesn't mean that there's good thinking behind it. Think of some of the things that people who report to the commissioner have said just this week that I've read that you've posted. I mean, the insanity of some of these things, and now extended school year, the way that we can fix performance in Texas is that we can pilot in 11 school districts extended school day, which is extended school year. But we're only going to give you 50% of the funding. And there's not a lot of else we've thought through. And then we're going to give you some money for a grant, and then you're going to have to go out and hire somebody to do some more work. And then we've got a dedicated, not dedicated, partially dedicated, it's usually dedicated, but I mean, does that not just jump out as, if we were a business, this would be considered a research project. And ultimately, we would decide on whether the efficacy of that project, because I look at it and go, increase teacher efficacy with more time for professional learning and collaboration. And I would say this respectfully, then you know what? Why didn't we hear that before? Because we could have extended school days under the current contracts. If instructional minutes are meaningful in driving performance, we could have extended school days before under the current parameters. So I have to understand really how we measure the efficacy of those teachers, okay? Increase student achievement by spreading curriculum over 210 days versus what today? 172, 170, what is 75,600? How many days do we have today?
I believe 175.
175. So this is 210.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Right. And there's,
Roughly
not to interrupt you, but there is a stipulation that we need to have 180 days in our calendar and the minimum minutes, which we have the minimum minutes. And then you can add the 30.
So that's a big deal, what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a qualifier that I'm not sure we'd agree to.
Well, and so let me jump in, Mr. Miller, and you brought up a bunch of points. Let me make it clear. I'm not saying I'm sold on it or not. I'm saying that when they give us $200,000 to explore it, why not explore it? We may find out that it's not anything we want to do with, but I do want to remind the board as far as the 50% pay, I don't like that either, the 50% ADA. But by the way, we only get 50% ADA for pre-K, which so I think you're right. As far as what it might lead to, the whole point of her team doing this is, I promise you, there will be specific goals required before it can move forward. While they chose 11 school districts, I will tell you a lot of school districts use something called the ACE program, which we investigated, and it's very, very similar to that program. Extends the school year to help kids, low SES kids, have more time in school. And so I don't know if that's the answer. I'm like I said, I'm not sold on it. But I do believe it is something that we at least ought to explore, especially when they gave us $200,000 to explore it. And so that's
And
what
I would just add on to that. I mean, I think what we know from all the targeted improvement plans we've done with all the different schools when it comes to their standardized test scores is that it comes up over and over again in root cause analysis that students need more time in their learning, but cramming all of that inside the current structure of the school day is like there's more TEKS, there's more need for social emotional learning, there's more need for this, more need for that, but yet we don't ever actually revisit the design of the day. And so where I would just disagree when it comes to District of Innovation is that was a whole different kettle of fish. I mean, sorry, that's not a scientific statement there, but this is really wrapped around things that we've struggled with when it comes to student achievement for our students who are from some of our most at-risk communities. The design of the day, what it consists of, the length of the school year. We provide summer programs with SSI every summer. And that's just doing more of the same and not really asking yourself, is there a different way to use that summer time to meet the needs of our kids than just focus on fifth graders with SSI? So that's what I would offer respectfully is different about this exploration.
I get that it's different. I guess $200,000, I assume that what we're being asked to approve next week is part of the $200,000?
Yes,
That's
it's
correct.
all coming out of there.
Okay, so I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I would respectfully submit that by the end of the day, we're well over $100,000 of internal cost. So $200,000, if you look at internal allocations of salaries against the project.
Okay, but no, I don't think it all comes from the grant.
All of it.
That's my point. I don't know what we're spending next week, so we may effectively be burdened at $110,000 with what the resources we've committed, and then depending on what we're asked to spend next week.
The $200,000 will cover all the expenditures, including next week.
Right. So then the other thing I would say is that I think we've had a lot of, for example, of campus culture. We've seen this. We've been to SLI and TASB and heard about what happens when a campus goes into a TIP or an IR. And, I mean, you've been a part of that, right? And the things that you do, you bring ponies out, you do painting, you bring the community out. There's a lot of things you do. You bring a culture, the Stephen Covey program. I mean, you know, there's a lot of things you do like that. And I'm not saying those campuses don't do that, but I think what we haven't heard is that those campuses, an example, there are no other options for us but to pursue this with those campuses. And one of the things about those campuses is that you get some retention issues of students after STAR testing, generally speaking. So now we're talking about extending the school year. Let's just say you add to the end of the year. You remember the tour we had a couple years ago where they're doing some incentives to get students to come back. So for me,
Beginning of the year.
This is for the beginning of the year, but I understand your point.
at some point there's parental exhaustion. Look at the adoption of virtual in those schools versus what we expected, right? So all I'm saying is that I'm not sure, and by the way, I would say this is not dissimilar to District of Innovation. These are all non-educators formulating strategies on what you guys should do to transform education, how they should basically reduce the value of the school board, reduce the value of administrations, and tell you that if you could perform better if you extended the school year. You could do better if you provided brain breaks. You could do better. That's what they're doing in this thing.
There are times where there are kernels of good ideas based on research that come out of areas that do not always have those things. And I would just say, I think pre-K is a good example of that. Pre-K is well backed that makes a difference for kids, and just because it came from the agency to do it doesn't mean that we shouldn't. And we should do pre-K whether they're going to fund it or not, and we have as a district done it whether they've funded it adequately or not.
The difference of pre-K, respectfully, is that there's a lot of research nationally around early childhood development. And so we can say that pre-K is not just an agency incentivized thing. So I'll move off.
Varying research on it, but yeah.
Well, there's generally high research on early childhood development. So I would just say, I'll be done here in a second, Catherine. I'm not sure why we would continue. I mean, unless you can give us an example of outcomes you're willing to commit to.
The student achievement outcomes that would come out of it would be what we are willing to commit to. That ultimately, as part of the process, we would say that you would see certain student achievement standards being met, and some of those being at grades 3 through 5, specifically when it comes to those state-mandated tests, beyond state-mandated tests, but specifically when it comes to STAR, we would expect those state-mandated state achievement outcomes to improve.
And Mr. Miller, I do believe, because when this came out in board letter, I did research, and there's about as much research for and against as there is for pre-K. So I think maybe we as a board need to educate ourselves in that research, and maybe you all could assist us on that.
Absolutely.
And because sometimes when we do a Google search, we're not looking, we don't necessarily know if what we're looking at is really credible, and so that would be helpful to us immensely, and I would appreciate that. Would that help, Mr. Miller? Maybe?
It may.
IOTA? Okay, I'm holding out hope.
Let me just say, the purpose for tonight was really to give an overview for next week's
Right.
thing, and I totally get the concerns. I'm not, like I said earlier, I'm not totally sold on it. I mean, we've had those discussions. I promise you, you will have a whole lot more information as a board as we continue to work through this, that at the end of this year, you're going to be ad nauseum on ADSE, all right? And, and then you can make the decision. I mean, and certainly, we'll go from there.
Hey, Ms. Lasan, sorry to interrupt.
So some of my questions were already, Ms. Hassett, answer that, because is it option? Will it be optional? But I guess that's, again, we're in the beginning of this stage, and so I guess what we're working on tonight is just we're going to vote next week on this contract that's $87,400, I guess, is what was in the board book. And so that's what we're concentrating on tonight. And so, I, would applaud you guys for, forward thinking, trying to get, innovative ways for these, these students at these campuses that need extra help to do that. I think it's probably, a good idea to look at it, and I appreciate that, Dr. Rogers is not completely sold on it, and I believe that, I believe that there'll be a lot of, picking things apart and, in coming time. I do, I actually, Mr. Miller, a little bit of whenever I read this, and I heard Commissioner Morath talking about, at the beginning of all this COVID stuff, talking about year-round school, so then you see some of this and you think, so I think that's kind of a little bit of where your stuff is coming from, and I get it, I really do. But I do think it's good. We need to help these kids, and my kids probably wouldn't enjoy year-round school, but I think there would probably be some kids that absolutely could benefit from it, and parents that would appreciate it. Do we have, and again, now that I've thought this question, I'm guessing you're going to say we don't know yet, but do we have any kind of like ballpark estimate of like what this would cost? Let's say we decided to go for it. We decided to do this at these two schools. Do we have any ballpark estimate of the cost of what this might look like for the district for these like extra 30 days?
Mm-hmm. So I have my first training on budget on Friday.
Okay. So coming in another meeting is what you're saying. Okay.
Because it's staffing for sure, but it's also transportation. It's there's a lot of things.
Everything
involved.
you mentioned. Yes. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's really all I had.
Okay. Ms. Cox?
Well, I'm very excited about this. Just like the district right now, we're doing an audit. We have to continue to look for ways to make it better. I mean, who would have thought we would be doing a virtual classroom right now? I don't think anybody would. And the district pulled it off and is actually doing a fantastic job working through the challenges and things. And I think this is just another opportunity for us to see, is this something that we need to provide for our kids? Doesn't mean we have to do it, but I'm very excited about it. So my question is, I think we're going to continue, as kind of Ms. Lasan said, to have a lot of questions, because, I do them all about cost. I was not a District of Innovative board member supporter, but, I always like to look at all opportunities and see what you have. So is this something, Dr. Rogers, we could put maybe in our board letter, maybe once a month or something, just to get an update of?
Yeah, we'll get an
happening
update,
here?
but I really envision probably, Ms. Cox, that Ms. Heinzman will probably be here, if not every work session, probably every other work session, just sort of
To give a report?
latest update and,
That would be
taking
wonderful.
questions. And, I mean, it's going to be a interesting process. I mean, we've had the discussion about stakeholders and, my question about teachers, and do teachers want to work 30 days more? And yet I think there are excellent teachers that do want to work 30 days more. Many of them go and get second jobs in the summer, which, so I mean, those are the kind of questions we've got to work through. And, do parents want to send their kids to school for 30 days more, which is why we'll hire this company to help us get that stakeholder input. I don't know the answer yet, but I think it's at least worth checking.
No, absolutely. So my other question is, I mean, there's obviously a lot of planning. I think you're going to do a fantastic job. But these other 11 districts, have you been given any foundation from TEA? Or are you just like throwing a bunch of sticky notes on the wall and saying, let's think about all this? I mean, how
No.
are you knowing how to start implementation and even planning all this?
So there are several documents that, at our initial training in July, that is guiding us. So all of the districts have different documents to guide our process. We have a rubric and a planning guide, and it's broken up into all different types of areas that we need to do as far as our planning goes. Has a lot of good questions for us to think about. So it's a great process. And then we have access to all of the other districts when all of their planning. So as districts are submitting their things, then we all can look at what each other is doing, and we can contact each other to kind of brainstorm. So this Friday is a full day training, and at the end, it's like a wrap up for just the project manager. So we'll be hearing a lot of different things on Friday, and then we'll wrap up again, and then we have opportunities to meet throughout and ask questions.
But are they giving room for like some gray areas, because what might work in Crowley may not work for LISD?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
our
it's
own
not
plan. Everybody's
set
plan is
implementation.
different based
Okay.
on the needs of the campuses and the needs of the district. Yeah, it's all different. One of them was like a needs analysis, but really good. Everything that I've seen that they have put out so far has been very well thought out, great questions, great guidance.
My questions, I think you've answered, is staffing, and you've got a plan or at least a guideline for that. Are we going to be able to involve some of our nonprofits that we have now for this extension, or do we know yet, kind of our communities and schools, if we have those mentors on campuses, or we have other networks that are working on those schools? At what point in time would it be, once this is approved and moving forward, that I would kind of think that they would need a little heads up at some point in time to even know if that was feasible. So that was something. The mobility rate, the last thing I want to do is spread the curriculum out, and then those kids move to a non-210-day and not know where they're at. And so I know y'all are probably thinking about those, but for trustees, it gives me pause in that we got to have really good stakeholder buy-in. And I say that because there's an area superintendent. He moved closer to the East Coast, and his first year he changed to an all year-round school, and he's back. That's all I'm going to say. And so, without that stakeholder involvement, and that's what I saw. I had friends in that district, and let me tell you, I heard every bit of it back in the day, and I wasn't a trustee back then, and I still heard about it, every bit of it. But I think this approach is a better and well thought out approach. And I too, I don't have a lot of good friends at TEA. And so, if any, and so, and the one I had got demoted. But so I don't, I do question, but at the end of the day, I have to say kids first. And if we can see research and we can have outcome goals for this to work,
We will.
and what you're saying we will, then that calms me. I just also question what HB3, and I guess from what your statement is if legislature goes back and HB3 is thrown in a basket and tumbled all again, then we're ready to pull the plug if this is not going to happen. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think the sustainability of House Bill 3 was in question before COVID-19. And we all talked about that. And, you know, while our legislators keep talking about how they're going to continue to support that, you know, I think that's a big if. Okay. And, you know, there's a lot of things in House Bill 3, whether it's teacher incentive allotment, whether it's reading academies, whether it's pre-K. I mean, the list goes on, so we'll just have to sort of wait and see. And luckily, we're not having to decide whether or not we're going to do this tonight or not. Because if tonight was the decision point, we wouldn't be here.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't dare be making a recommendation about the program tonight. This is just about exploring. to see what options there are.
Okay, and I know Mr. Miller has something else, but we started over here, so let's go back around. Yeah, go ahead.
So kind of to Mr. Miller's point and to piggyback off Dr. Rogers, I guess one of the things that I would like to see when you come back is what are those determining factors? I'll be very blunt, to even move beyond December. I want to know what those determining factors are going to be. And what are we looking at beyond December? Because I don't count on money beyond December. Because you can be in grant application, you know, the circular thing for 2 to 3 months. I want to know what are we going to, when you come, I want to know what those are to continue the process moving forward. What are we looking at? And what are our expectations? I don't know what the expectations are going to be 2 years down the road if it's implemented. But those are the two things that I would ask for when you come back and to give us updates and so forth.
Okay. Ms. Hassett?
Can I just make one
Sure.
As far as the goals and the progress monitoring, we will be developing all of that before December. It is part of, we're starting the process on Friday, but then the next piece to that training won't be until October. I'm not sure if I'll have it all completely firm, but we'll do as much as we can.
I'll take, you know, I'll take fuzzy. Fuzzy at least gives me something.
Progress monitoring would be
Yes.
one thing I would be very interested in.
We'll have to have specific goals and how we're going to monitor it and everything. All of that is part of this.
Specifically more by subgroup. Are you going to try to delineate them by subgroup to make sure that we're hitting the students who are needing it more? Those are the progress measures that I would be interested in, as well as you mentioned GT students. We can't forget the array of students that will be at the campuses. So those are all the performances that I would be very interested in. What are your expectations on how you will impact students' performance with this? Because I already know there are already at least 2 districts that already do full-time year-round school way before TEA, where the legislature put a cap on it. There's only 2 or 3 that in the state that are doing that right now, right? And they're already showing better results.
So the research I've done throughout the whole United States, there are very few schools in any information that I have that go beyond 180 days. They spread out 180 days over a year. Yeah. So this is kind of being the forefront of thinking of adding days to the calendar. So, and that's based, that is based on performance in other countries that go to school longer than 180 days.
But I would definitely love to see the research, just like Ms. Sells says. I can Google what I think is a valid source and read it all, and if it's not valid, then I've just
Same. I'm still looking.
Well, if you can find any and send them to me, I would really love to read what you have.
Okay.
Another point is, I'm trying to figure out what is the TEA requirements and what is the grant requirements for this. Are they one and the same for the requirements of?
Are you talking about the funds that?
Just the process you're going through. Is TEA requiring a whole lot more of the district to develop things? Are they putting,
I think this is optional. It's the way I understand. Everywhere I've looked, it's it's optional for districts to implement, but it is a way to increase student achievement. And
There's nothing in administrative code that's requiring XYZ. It's really just the grant
No,
in order to.
just the grant.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And I think that's all for now.
Okay, Mr. Miller, sorry about that. Still.
One question and just a couple points, and I appreciate all your work on this, Susan, as always. You know I've been very complimentary of your work, so don't take it personal.
no, I'm not.
Nobody should.
I'm skeptical too. I'm looking at it both ways.
You said by the 175 days, 180 days. We do 175 days in our calendar right now.
Yes.
Would the district be required to go to 180
No.
days?
No,
Just
Just
just those two schools.
those schools? But we're talking about 30 days.
Up
There's a-
to.
Up
You
to
don't have to do all
30
30.
additional.
Up to 30,
Okay.
no more than 30
And you'll tell us soon what our recommendation would be.
for meaning like the calendar. Is that what you mean? Like
That's
where we're going to add those days in?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
30
because that
days.
has to be board approved.
Right.
And the good thing about at these two campuses going to 180 days is we would get full ADA for those days
Yeah.
up to 180. So
Correct.
So that would be a positive of increasing. It wouldn't make sense to keep us at 175 and add 30 days and get less money, you know. So that's at least part of the plan that makes sense. So
So, Catherine, Mrs. Sells brought up a good point about mobility. Those two campuses have high mobility. So I think it again becomes a little bit dubious at how you really measure the performance of the campus as well as the individual students. So we get a high mobility, someone coming in at second grade who's an English language learner who may have some special needs. I mean, we're just, it's going to be really hard to measure performance. The other thing I'd say is, if you just run some simple numbers, say you get 400 kids at $6,000 a year, and I get that it's not a full year, but let's just say it's 20%. You're talking about spending, if education is a break-even model, $500,000 to $700,000 to fund this. And I think it begs the question, if these two campus leaders had the choice of doing this or getting $350,000 to use during the year to maybe hire 5 more teachers to reduce classroom sizes or those types of things, those are the what-ifs that I think we need to hear in this and hear from them, because if you put this before the board, it's going to be based on a commitment of outcomes, and those are the two campus leaders that have to say we agree. Because if they don't agree, then I think we have to reconsider our options. And there may be
Yeah.
other options, by the way.
I don't disagree, Mr. Miller, that those two campus leaders, their voice is going to be critical in this. I mean, I think stakeholders in general, parents, teachers, I think all of them are going to be critical in trying to see if this is something that they feel is worthwhile. Because it doesn't do us any good as an administration or as a board to force this down someone's throat and they really don't want to do it. And I promise you that is not our intent. So.
Thank you, Susan.
Is there any other questions or comments?
I'm sorry, I have one quick question. Who created the rubric? Did TEA create the rubric?
They are partnering with another firm.
Their own technical
ERS
advisor?
is kind of. I believe they helped create that, but I don't know who the actual author is.
Okay.
But they're very good.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming and presenting that.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes.
All right, so switching topics. We owe you all a report about middle school study skills that we owed you in March, but then we all know what happened in March. So we did not forget, and Ms. Lewis and Ms. Adams are here to help provide the presentation to report to you back on this idea of middle school study skills.
So take us back.
Oh, y'all take a wipe and wipe.
Goodness.
We want that?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Now you can clean it good.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Then she touched it again.
Yeah.
It's a small part.
Okay, well, we return to the topic once again, so thank you all for giving us this opportunity to really take some time and explore, visit with some people, get some information and data from our community before we presented that information. So this was a request from you earlier in order for us to really look and investigate middle school study skills and whether it should be at all campuses and a required an elective. So in fall of 2019, we had stated that we would survey parents of 8th grade students to where they looked back actually at their 6th grade and have them rank priorities regarding content for electives in order to determine what we were hoping to achieve, whether it's a required course or whether we would actually embed into other areas. This discussion and survey results will determine the format for delivery, whether it's online models embedded in curriculum or as a class or through advisory as well. And then also we were going to look at the high school transition, the college transition course to help us inform what the middle school content needed to look like so it aligned with that curriculum as well. So just to give you a historical perspective on middle school study skills, even as early back as when I can remember, when I was a principal in 2011, and I know it existed prior to that, study skills was utilized pretty much across all of the campuses. However, there were no standards, there was no curriculum, it was really more of a study hall back then. So then when I came into my current position to where I really worked directly with all middle school campuses, one of the things I was tasked at was really looking at the alignment across all middle schools in electives and what was being offered for that consistency. So in 2016, we started talking about in middle school to really phase out study hall. That if you were going to offer a study skills class, that it really need to have some sort of curriculum or program tied to it with specific skills being taught. At the same time, we also were looking at just all electives in that alignment piece. So beginning in 2017-18, these were the specific curriculum or programs that were offered at different campuses. I asked and got feedback from the middle schools. So they were either using Success for Students, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, or a SOAR study skills curriculum, and that was primarily used with ESL students. In 1920, which was last year, there were very few middle schools that actually offered a study skills class. It was typically designed specifically for ESL or special ed populations, the more at-risk students. So, but what was happening we didn't have a specific class, however, it was embedded, whether it was through advisory, or in content areas where they're working with Cornell notes, just at different ways, as well as, of course, Avid, and then some of the campuses had the No Excuses University. So we had lots of different things happening across the campuses.
So we started talking about what are the best practices when it comes to teaching study skills. So Ms. Lewis will share in a few minutes some of the input that we got from our Future Pathways Committee work as well as our principals. And where we landed is that, so CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, and they have different skill sets and SEL competencies that drive the core competencies for what social emotional learning looks like. And so when we started looking at all of these pieces, through that lens, we realized that a lot of study skills rested within the SEL core competencies, and we'll talk about that in just a second. We also, a lot of the feedback was that study skills in a vacuum is not always effective, so the best practice is that it's connected to content. There's an application piece to their classes, to their goal setting. Again, a lot of that came from our Future Pathways work that we've done the past year and a half. And so when you look at social emotional learning, academic success, and then study skills, your best practice is integrated. And so we have the middle school advisory year at a glance. That's something that we worked on this summer because every middle school does have a dedicated advisory time daily. And so through that advisory year at a glance, it is a vessel for some of the curriculum, some of the SEL pieces, as well as application of study skills. So this is an example. So the 5 SEL competencies are on the left. That's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And we put a little bit of a description because there is such overlap when you think about those terms. But if you look at the study skills that came out in the parent survey, and when we were talking to principals and counselors that Ms. Lewis will reference, these are the top study skills that came up that would be most beneficial to the academic setting, but also applied to the SEL competencies. So when you look at self-awareness, you're talking about student efficacy and motivation, which, student learning can't happen if you don't have engagement and motivation. When you're talking about social awareness, collaborative learning is a huge piece of how we are teaching our students to be lifelong learners and 21st century workers. Self-advocacy is a relationship skill piece and knowing how to advocate for themselves. And then, whenever you talk about study skills, organization, note-taking, time management, all of those pieces are relevant and critical. But when you look at them through the lens of social emotional learning and embedded in the content and curriculum with application, that is really your best practice.
So what we did was we took the survey and sent it out to 8th grade parents, and we got 552 responses. Wasn't quite what we hoped for, but we did extend the time and send a reminder out, but this is the data that we did receive. If you'll remember, we were having them look at it through the lens of a 6th grader. So in 6th grade, you are required to take a fine arts. So we were asking based on their next elective, what would they choose? And so the results showed a pretty equal balance of your fine arts, Spanish, or study skills, but the most highly selected was a technology or STEM class was what they chose. But then when we asked how 6th graders should learn study skills, whether it's requiring it as a class or embedding it into a content area, the survey results really showed that those were very close together in what they were needed or wanted. The top skills that were identified through the survey were note-taking, organization, time management, how to study, and then again self-advocacy, which those aligned pretty much with the pieces from Castle. Once, we talked about it, I talked about it in our principal meetings and really wanted them to kind of know what it was we were looking to find. And so we had a lot of discussion about what they were doing currently at their campus, what they would like to see moving forward. So I followed up with a Google form and just asked for specific feedback from their campus in general. And obviously the principals were in agreement that the study skills that we did highlight and talk about, and that the parents were wanting to see were inherently developmentally appropriate, a task for middle school students to be successful. They stated that study skills was embedded in content areas. It was also provided in advisory lessons or embedded into Canvas, whether it was through discussion or other opportunities. I know that some campuses used it for goal setting as well through Canvas activities. Many campuses currently utilize planners. They use the iPads in classroom, just different structures to help with agendas, assignments, focusing on their learning targets, just to help with that organization. In BASE and through RTI, they are also targeting specific study skills with those students. And all of our campuses, and it's probably happening this week currently right now with boot camp. So they do Give Me 5. They have lots of ways that they focus these first 5 days. And it's going to look different this year just because things are different, but because they have to do a lot of COVID given direction in regards to that. But they will talk about organization and time management, and really through our virtual learning right now, that time management piece is really having to be addressed with students as well, because they do have to be motivated to work on their own. The principal, I've just asked for input and what they would like to see if we do move towards really incorporating more opportunities and consistency across campuses. They felt like that it really should be embedded through an advisory or in content through advisory, but also if we're going to provide opportunities for learning to happen at home as well, that it could be a Canvas or an online opportunity for parents and students. Because that was something I know that we all talked about as well, is how do we provide that so conversations can be extended at home. And so we talked about those parent module pieces. Principals also agreed that the study skills identified in the survey would positively impact academic performance, and that an isolated class is not the most effective to just teach skills, that it really should be embedded into what the students are learning. And study skills are developmental, which I know we all know that for all of us actually. Sixth grade needs different identified skills more, and then it progresses as they go up to 7th and 8th grade.
So another just piece of the puzzle is I think one of the pieces that's really key on here is standardized. When we talk about, I got to be in some of the principal discussions with the Future Pathways Committee, and we really talked about the standardization and having some supported curriculum, because they knew that this was an investment in academic success, and sometimes the investment takes some work on the front end, and they really agreed that standardized support would be huge. So one of the things that we worked on this summer was a middle school advisory calendar, kind of a year at a glance, and these are just some examples of things that are embedded into it. So all of our second step curriculum, our rhythm mental health check-ins, all of our state mandates for early mental health intervention, which includes our suicide prevention curriculum, our substance use prevention, our trauma-informed pieces, and then, we keep saying Future Pathways and Choices 360, and that's kind of the CCMR registration. What does my high school, middle school, post-high school experience look like? And so all of these are already a part of our advisory calendar this year, and it is standardized. So this is a vessel that we've really tried to develop going into this school year. And so this is relevant because as we're talking about advisory, it's not just we hope we get to do it once a week. It's really a systemic piece that we're going to utilize across all of our middle schools this year. So this was our original recommendation in March. So we were going to put together a committee of campus leaders, teachers, Ms. Lewis, our counseling admin team, some counselors and parents. And I think the other key word here is experiences. It's not just, I think we've learned that it's not just a module. It's not just learning content. It's actually an experience for content. And so looking at some experiences for organization, time management, and note-taking for sixth graders. And so we had talked about doing a pilot at a minimum of 10 middle schools in sixth grade this spring and releasing some parent modules. And then next school year would be a district-wide implementation, and then release the parent modules aligned with those. So the revised recommendation, we wanted to include that this summer we actually took our Future Pathways work that we met all last school year, and we had some work groups this summer, and they did develop our Future Pathways year at a glance in grades 6 through 12. It incorporates Career Center Visit. It incorporates all of our college and career technology. It's, again, experience-based instead of we kind of had a mindset shift last year about we're not picking classes, we're choosing experiences. And so I think that is all relevant when we talk about study skills. And so that sequence of advisory lessons is developed. So what we talked about is moving our group this spring to put together the group of people. We'll also have how is advisory working? Is it effective? Is there efficacy in how we're doing it with some micro-learning pieces? Because we know advisory is maybe 25 minutes. And then next fall, we would do a pilot at a minimum of 10 middle schools. And then in the spring, we would release parent modules, and we would always make sure that our parent modules aligned with whatever experiences and learning that we were doing on campus. And then in 22-23 would be the full rollout for what the experiences are in 6th grade and then moving to 7th and 8th grade. Oh.
So that's our report on middle school study skills, and ultimately just to, point out on the timeline, I think our fall
Yeah.
of 2021 at the bottom should be fall of 2022. It is a big shift for content area teachers to have a common approach. So like at 6th grade, if you focus on note taking, to ask every content area teacher to have a common way that you do note taking across the whole building, that is quite a shift. So that's one of the reasons for building in the pilot work, just so you know kind of our thinking there on that timeline piece.
Okay, we ready for questions?
We're ready.
We're ready for questions? Let's start with Ms. Hassett.
Thank you for all this work. I appreciate it. I've been hounding you on trying to make sure all of our students, because to me it really is different. I'm not an educator. My kids learned what they were learning in elementary, and then they learned how to learn in middle and high, and some of my children learn better how to learn than others. And they need definite instruction on how to learn, not even what to learn. So I really appreciate that. I like the multi-pronged approach of embedding it as well as having it in advisory, because sometimes I think it will help a lot of students to do it both ways, to show them how to do it while they're in class, but also to remind them, not just me, hey, don't forget, you should be using this. And so I think that's going to be very helpful, along with the others, the time management and all the SEL information. So I don't really actually have a question. I'm just really looking forward to seeing it implemented, so that our kids can learn how to learn even better. So thank you.
And Ms. Hassett, I totally agree with you as far as we all learn a little different, and actually we all learn a little different according to what we're learning. I mean, so I have a different learning style, whatever, different for science than I do for,
Right.
English language arts. And so I do believe in the system that they've really recommending that it makes sense.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Well, I clearly agree, because I think we should have put Avid in every school, but I would also say that it's impossible to have every kid attend Avid. So I think in sequencing this, the data from the parent survey, probably not a real surprise as educators or parents, right? Note-taking, organization, time management, how to study, self-advocacy. That last one's a really important one because I think it gets to more your side of the fence or Monia's side of the fence. But I think that's really important information. Now, question is then, second piece, principal input. If the district adopted a road study curriculum, principals recommend embedding through advisory content in online modules. But the advisory content is second step curriculum, rhythm check-in, early mental health intervention, substance use prevention, trauma, more of the choices type stuff. So it would seem to me that, and maybe this is what you're recommending, I think we do a really good job, while they don't get attended heavily, of the programs we have where you guys bring in speakers who have experienced trauma and are educating parents on how to avoid that trauma, how to address it, how to identify it, those types of things. And I think it's excellent. And I think we've done a really good job with Ask an Expert in some of those areas. And so I would offer that, and maybe this is what you guys are suggesting, those are the same things we could do around note-taking, organization, time management, how to study, and self-advocacy. Seems like a library that's available to our parents to help with that, because parents need to help with advocacy. And often a student will fail in the other areas because they just don't know how to advocate for themselves. Now, the counselors have to then be on board, and the teachers need to be on board. So if a student comes forward with that, and I think you're suggesting that, right? You're kind of weaving that together.
Yes.
And so the other thing I would say is, as it relates to teachers learning some of these things, This is not meant to be trivial, but you could literally take a LinkedIn course on every one of these topics and have a high level of proficiency because it'll have a little exam and really understand. Now, most teachers, I would say, are probably pretty good at this stuff, but they, from a time perspective, don't have the time to educate 40 kids on how to be advocates. I'm talking middle school or high school. I know you're just middle school here, but it
applies.
does scaffolding, as you would say, right, Lori?
Very good.
Wow.
And so I think it's a really important thing for us to do, and I think it gets, for me, I'd love to see it do it as, okay, you've got a plan here, let's get it done. Right, let's get the libraries built, let's get the integration with the class. I know we're in COVID. Let's start doing it so we can start measuring it. Because a lot of this is pretty basic, right? And we're behind it. Now, this is something that I would vote for if you asked us for money. Because I think it's that important that these 5 criteria these parents identified, generally speaking, amongst some other things that happen from a choices perspective, are things that cause students not to perform at the appropriate level that they probably could otherwise. So I appreciate the work and look forward to seeing it move forward quickly.
Thank you.
Ms.
Thank you.
Hassan?
Thank you for this. It's great. Remind me again, I'm thinking, I don't have a middle schooler this year. Do they go to advisory, like twice a week?
We changed the bell schedule this year, so they go to advisory every day.
They do, okay,
Yes.
because they're kind of block scheduling right
It's
now.
AB,
right?
AB, AB, and that's how it will be all year. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
We did that where they wouldn't have eight teachers a day,
Right.
particularly for those that chose the virtual route.
Yes.
That's pretty
Makes total sense.
overwhelming,
So they still have 8 classes. They're just, got it.
not
Okay.
in one day.
Ms. Cox?
So I love this. I think the embedding is the key, and as Mr. Miller alluded to, these, and Ms. Hassett, the topics are spot on, and I can only speak for my own children. I can't speak for anyone else's, but they're all over the spectrum, gifted and talented, into the special ed program. And I think the biggest piece is them in college is the note-taking piece and just learning those skills. That's not something you're born with. It's something you learn how to do and actually have an understanding. I mean, one of my kids thinks that you just study the Quizlets and that's all you need to do to pass a test and ends up failing. So those are skills that these kids need. So my only request is I would love to see this all through to 8th grade because you don't just learn this in 6th grade. You really need those 3 key years are so important, and then you are ready for high school to, start breaking that information down and understanding what those teachers are saying and what note-taking to be done. I'll be negative, Nan, on the advisory. I'll be real honest with you. Again, take my own kids and kids I've interviewed. It's a texting session for, hey, what are my friends doing right now for 25 minutes? It's a break. So unless somebody is truly in there going to be talking to them, I've asked all my kids, did you listen to the suicide prevention? No, I was talking to such and such in the classroom. They're not paying attention. So to me, they're missing key content that is trying to be provided for them, and that's what I tell them. You're missing out on opportunities that the district is trying to tell you that'll help you mature and, grow. So hopefully someone will be in there implementing on top of that.
That is definitely our hope for this year, and there's a lot to cover that the principals really wanted that time to provide this as well as some other interventions and tutoring, and so they need to use it or I'll take it away. And so we'll monitor and see how it goes.
Thank you. Ms. Prosnick?
How is this different from Avid?
Well, I think there's several pieces. So first of all, just from the get-go, 40% of AVID is tutorials, and it requires a large investment in additional staff. There's a lot of professional learning that goes with the many. I always say that AVID is like an onion. There's an infinite number of layers. And so I think we're taking the most prevalent AVID skill sets and we're breaking it down to where it can be done. AVID requires a huge investment of time. I mean, it's an elective class and a lot of kids take it for 7 years, and there is still new learning happening every year. So I think we're trying to make it available and digestible for everyone, whether they have other programs they're involved in. We're trying to make it accessible for everyone as well. There's definitely overlap, which I know is what drove part of all of these recommendations. So I would say that there's more accessibility when you don't put it into an elective-only class.
So that goes to my point for the middle school campuses that do have AVID. We're just duplicating.
Well, at the campuses that have AVID, you can actually utilize the AVID curriculum because it's considered an AVID campus.
Right.
So when we do build some of our study skills lessons, I mean, there are copyright pieces, but it is also best practices in that. So again, being an AVID program, it's not just a class. It is truly something that they are in over several years. There is more to it than just study skills.
I agree.
Yeah.
I have a girl that I mentor that's now in her 5th year of AVID, and I'll be 6th year, excuse me. I'll be very blunt. I don't think it did anything beyond 3. That's my personal opinion. It became a club, my personal opinion. What the board, in my recollection, talked about was making our middle schools AVID campuses so that we could use those best practices on all of our middle school campuses so that all of our middle school students could benefit from the Cornell notes, from the goal setting, and from some of those layers that you talked about in AVID. Not the tutorial part, but those, I would call them curriculum pieces in AVID. And so that's my question. If I'm on an AVID campus and we're putting this on, to me, we are duplicating. We don't need to have AVID. Does that make sense? We don't need to have a specific class for AVID because it will be already embedded throughout the curriculum on that campus.
So I will speak to that on the AVID point of view. And I think I said this the past 2 times that I've been up here. AVID is not 20 minutes twice a week. AVID is an investment in professional learning. It is an investment in, it truly is a program. It's not a class.
So is this just a cheap version?
No, I don't think it's a cheap version. I think when you talk about accessibility, and I think it's relevant when we talk about study skills, even mandating a study skills class, even if it was for a semester in middle school, it limits accessibility to some of our other programs. And so I think when you're looking at all of the experiences that we talk about for students, study skills can be an experience that everyone has, but the AVID program is something that they are choosing just like they would choose a fine arts program, just like they would choose the middle school advanced Spanish program. So I think it's apples and oranges to some degree, even though the content is similar. I think when you look at the study skills curricula and support that you could do systemically on a campus without an investment that you would have of a student choosing to be in the AVID program, you could benefit that every student on the campus would have exposure and access to this.
And I know from the March work session that we went into, when it was first presented, we went into it with 2 recommendations. We came out of it actually with 3 because an option 2A got presented. And so one of the things that after we met to debrief the input from the discussion where the 2A was offered up as an option, that there was really 4 options then that were for consideration. And so we just had indicated that while we were getting these building blocks in place, we would hold with where AVID is and then re-examine. So definitely it will require re-examining once we get this middle school program in place to come back and say, what does this mean for AVID at middle school?
That's really my point. I mean, I don't think this is a bad. I want to make sure.
Yeah.
I think this is good work. But my point is, if these are the best practices of AVID, and I believe that every student could benefit from AVID. I just want to make that clear. I just don't know if you need, 7 years of it. But that's really kind of where I come down. I look at this, and like I wrote on one of the things, I was like, that's Avid, that's Avid,
Yeah,
that's Avid.
There's no doubt, Ms. Prosnick, as Jill said, that there's a lot of overlap. Here's the issue is if you had Avid at every campus, not every kid could fit it in their schedule.
But if it was my understanding, though, is if it was considered an Avid campus where every teacher used the Avid practices. So Avid was, if you will, embedded in every bit of curriculum, then you don't need a separate class. It's just part of that campus culture.
Yeah, I get that. I think what we felt is that we can meet the needs of what Avid provides without doing that at every, having Avid at every middle school. But ultimately, what we had asked when we met and visited about this is, hey, let's leave it where it is. Let us create this, and then we'll come back and visit about that.
So then would the 10 campuses be the 10 campuses that do not have Avid?
Well, it's a minimum of 10. If everybody wants to participate, then we will allow all to participate. But with so many campuses that have been identified as TEA, there is a lot on their plate already that they're doing. So whether they're going to take on this task as well with all the interventions and things, there will be some that will do it anyways. But we're going to pull 10 in at a minimum. But it could be all 15.
Mr. Miller, did you
Yeah,
have something else?
I'm with Jenny on the Avid thing. It's the first thing jumped out. But I think that as we did agree last year to kind of hold, I think you bring up an interesting point about a student that is in Avid for so many years and it becomes a club. Because I actually wouldn't disagree with that in some campuses. And I think where we failed, without going into any details, is where we've had Avid teachers that were assigned by the campus leader that didn't make it look like Avid was that big a priority. You know what I'm talking about? And so, therefore, Avid then does become a club. It doesn't have a measurement of, especially when you get to the high school. I'm talking middle school specifically, as I'm looking at Lori about something specific, but especially at the high school, right? And in some schools, to get Avid going, as you remember, the teacher could pick who was in Avid, then that's a freshman year, then a sophomore year, and senior year, and then it's not at any middle school level, I don't think, at that feeder. And so it becomes very complicated. So the point here is, and I think I brought this up when we talked about this last time, Jeff Kosh said once about special ed. One of the things he does is he makes sure that everybody understands the special ed issues. So in other words, that's integrated into the way that campus works. So what you're suggesting, whether it's Avid or whatever you guys want to brand this, every student should have access to this.
Absolutely.
This, to me, is one of the biggest things that we could do in closing the achievement gap. And if I even just think about my own education, where I wasn't taught, because my parents didn't go to college, so my freshman year as a junior college, as I'm failing out, guess what I had to go to? A studies class, right? And so I didn't have that opportunity in high school or middle school, and I didn't have that, with all due respect to my parents, I didn't have that example at home. This is where the rubber meets the road. And I would say, if there's an issue of Avid efficacy, then we should start looking at that and ask why we're spending the money on those campuses, especially when we're looking at this as an alternative, because if this is good for middle school, whether it's 10 campuses or you're ultimately 20, whatever, then 15. It's good for 15. Then it's good for high school. And then we maybe get away from having special programs that kids attend. But remember, there was an achievement gap objective with Avid, right? It was about access and equity, achievement via individual determination. It was using Cornell notes. It was having the school flags or whatever you call them, the banners on around the room, like you would at DeGan or other no excuses you type school. And that was it created a culture of motivation. Now, we have to remember the Career Center guys were here too, right? And so we've got to promote that. But we should have that everywhere. And if teachers, to me, that's a 30-minute presentation, guys. We got to get this at a PLC or in service or whatever. We got to get this going. This is how we close the achievement gap. And guess what? If there's a time to get ready for it, it's now. Because that thing is widening faster than we can even understand it with the current environment we're in. So this is a great time. Carpe diem, seize the moment. But I think Jenny's got a good point. If there's campuses where we're not seeing a high level of efficacy, and I don't know how you measure that, Dr. Rogers, as it relates to AVID. I mean, Jill, you have more expertise than I of course, certainly do. Then we should take a look at that. Maybe we stop funding at those campuses. Say we'll leave it at the high school, not in the middle school, or hey, leave it at middle school till we get done with these 10 and then move from there. But let's move on it.
Wasn't that our discussion? Please remind me, but we did have a discussion. One of the options was to take it completely out of the middle school.
It was,
and we did not
yes.
want to do that until we had this in place.
Yeah, that became option 3, middle school
Yes.
study skills and AVID at all the high schools.
Okay. Yes.
I had one other question, because I know I had bugged you to have the AVID-esque
Yeah.
techniques for all of our students, and I appreciate that. But I didn't actually see it as duplicating things at a middle school. To me, what I saw was the AVID type strategies would be used for all the students during their advisory period or embedded into core. But those are going to be the very beginner AVID strategies. And then the AVID campuses that are in middle school right now would, because there are 37 layers to Cornell Notes that I have no desire to do, that they could then teach them at the middle school level of the details. And because you're not going to teach the average student. You would glaze my kids' eyes over quickly if you tried to teach them all of those. Is that not what you will do at the middle school level during this transition, by having the AVID kids continue further and not necessarily have to do the basics?
Yes, I think that's going to be part of the work of the committee, that we will look at the scope and the development of that and how that will progress over the 3 years.
Thank you.
And just for me, I believe this is needed. I was one of those parents that I saw this need in my child. There wasn't an AVID on our campus, and I had to go out and spend money on tuition, and went through SMU to get him some study and organizational skills. It paid off for me, but it would have been nice to have known that opportunity would have been there in the school where he could have, because that was the struggle. Even after he went through the program with SMU, it was then translating those skills that they had taught him into the classrooms that now he was a part of every single day. And so I think that is the key. And I think that this parent piece is the key. And I think that for all kids, we parents can harp on them all day long. You probably agree. But when somebody shows them the success of what they're doing, that's not me, it clicks. And so I'm looking forward. And I echo Mr. Miller's. I really, with the success of the Ask an Expert, I really hope that we can somehow integrate this where those pieces are out there for us to keep pushing out to the community. So,
Now we just want one last thing. You know, in AVID, we pay tutors $15 an hour, I think, right?
That's a big part
And
of it.
I think about what because advisory period, whatever that is, right? They go kind of goof around, whatever. But if we were to substitute that money, potentially, into opportunities where a student is struggling, and we bring in someone that is proficient in whatever curriculum or program you guys put together. It could be AVID, it could be Cornell Notes, or whatever. Advocacy, what does it mean to take an AP class or a pre-AP class? Maybe we substitute some of that money that we're spending on certain students that are having achievement issues, that they really do have potential. They just can't get organized.
Can you tell, when you're talking self-advocacy, is that even asking for help?
It's so, and I'll put it in the context of even tutorials. It is saying, instead of walking into a classroom and saying, I didn't know how to do my homework, it is articulating, here's what I know, here's where I got stuck, here is the point to which it's being able to teach the students, it's social skills, go in and talk to the teacher. Because if you have ever been in a 6th grade classroom in the morning, they just come in and they're like, my mom told me to come. And so self-advocacy is, that's right, is,
Why did she tell you to come? I don't know.
yeah. But self-advocacy is articulating where you're stuck. It's also knowing when to speak up for yourself. It's also knowing how to respectfully engage with an adult when you need extra help. It's all of that. When we talk about layers, self-advocacy could also be saying, I've hit a wall. It's related to mental health. It's related to academics. So I think self-advocacy, that's why it falls in SEL skills. But with respect to tutorials, it's knowing how to articulate what do you need help on. And the tutorial process isn't, let me show you how to do this math program. It's not a reteach. It's facilitated teaching kids how to think and how to push through where they get stuck. And so that's self-advocacy.
Which is a skill that a lot of people need.
Yeah.
Everybody needs. Yeah. Okay. I'm not saying, I'm just saying in the world today, I see a lot of people that don't know how to self-advocate in a healthy manner.
That's absolutely true.
Amen.
Healthy. Yes. Yeah.
Keyword.
So, okay. Well, thank you all
Thank you,
so
guys.
much. Thank you.
Thanks,
thank you.
Jill. Thanks, Leanne. Moving right along.
Yep, switching topics. It's time for Dr. Thornell to come on up to the microphone, and we're going to talk about the LISD asynchronous learning plan submission that is required by TEA. So,
And she's going to expect you to take the disinfectant wipe.
Yeah.
and of course, we printed off a copy of the presentation for you. You had the plan provided to you in board book. And as Dr. Thornell will share, we utilize the TEA template in order to complete the plan that he's going to talk with you about this evening.
Can you hear me?
Nope, it's not on.
The little switch.
Turn it on.
How about that?
Yeah, there you
All
go.
right, thank you.
You're good.
Okay. Well, it is an honor to be up here today, truly representing just about every department in the district, because when you see how heavy that report was, just about everybody went through a piece of this plan and tried to put it together for you. So I would be remiss if I didn't thank a few people real quick. Well, I've got the microphone, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I want to thank the learning and teaching team, specifically the ladies and gentlemen that are back there, Jason, Karen, Michelle, Adrian, and their team have done an outstanding job in a very short period of time. All the school chiefs had to work with staffing and with scheduling in a very short time, technology, communications, counseling, special ed, professional learning, all of them. Like I said, we're going to hit every department in here at some point tonight, and so I'd like to do that. And I also, by name, would like to mention there were 6 people that got selected and chosen and voluntold, all those things, if you will. But we have 6 campus administrators at the elementary level: Lindsay McDaniel, Stephanie Lawson at the middle school, Suzanne Beecher, and Iram Shazad, and high school Aaron Harrell and Joel Eder. And those people have done an outstanding job and worked tirelessly to try to coordinate all these teachers and all these kids into a virtual learning pathway. So I wanted to publicly thank them tonight. The overview of the presentation, it's basically 2 sections. We're going to talk a little bit about the background and the TEA requirements, and then I'll also kind of overview and highlight the LISD plan as the requirements led to us here in the district and in this time. So I want to start with this quote real quick, because I think the entire world has a little uneasiness, don't they, with the pandemic and everything that's going. It is going to allow some opportunity for some growth. What I wish I had started with, a better quote would have been what Dr. Rogers started with this evening, which was the cornerstone of embracing innovation with flexible, relevant, and solution mindset. And I wish I'd put that there, Dr. Rogers. But we will start with there.
I stole it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I also, knowing that we need to stretch, and we've been talking about being flexible, I have a rubber band on my wrist that every time I'm not flexible, I want to pop myself. But really, I was going to give you all rubber bands to remind you of that as well, but then I was afraid you'd shoot me with them. So I didn't but we do need to remind ourselves to be flexible. Okay? So just a little bit of the background. the timeline was very accelerated to put a plan together in place. As you know, we met in July at the school board meeting, and we talked a little bit about some of the parameters the state had set forth. After that meeting, we put together a letter that went to say we were going to try an asynchronous plan. We got your approval for that, for some funding, and we pushed back the start date a little bit, as you remember. And all along, TEA has been periodically, every week or so, releasing a few more things and a few more parameters that we were working through. One of them being asking our parents to make a decision. Would they do in-person remote, or would they do virtual? And as we were doing that, the technology department was working fast and furiously to get enough devices ready for all our kids and everything that went with that. So where we are on the timeline now is we'll talk through it a little bit of the plan tonight, answer as many questions as we can. I'll come back to you at our next board meeting to ask for approval, and we will turn it in to the state. It has to be turned in by October 1st. If there's a need for any revisions or submissions, they will turn around and send it to us, and then a final copy would be due by November 3rd. So that's kind of the timeline we're working on to do that. Just a little bit more background funding. Okay, one of the big components of this actually is ADA. How do we make sure our kids are going to still be in school with a virtual plan, no matter what we choose to do? And so there are some requirements there that I know you're well aware of, but we have to have a certain amount of time for instruction, 4 hours a day. Okay, and that is to receive funding either synchronously or asynchronously. If you remember at the board meeting in July, we kind of talked about the differences of those. But I wanted to just kind of remind you, synchronous instruction, that would be basically everybody on the computer at the same time, watching a teacher live, going through the lessons. It's not very flexible because you have to be there watching at that time. It doesn't allow for videotaped lessons to watch it later or anything like that. Synchronous means right then live. The other parameter that was kind of tough by the state is K through 2 students were not allowed to do that. They're not eligible for synchronous learning. So we had to have an asynchronous plan for them. Okay. The overall takeaway today: if you miss synchronous learning, okay, you're absent. Okay, you don't make it up, and we would lose funding for that as well. So we look at asynchronous instruction. It does offer some flexibility. Students are not required to be present all the time. Okay, there is, and this is the definition from the state, but there's intermittent teacher interaction with a student on a computer. They can be synchronous with them at scheduled times, but there's also much more time when the students are working independently. Okay? We considered this a more flexible plan, if you will, because it allows for all of our students are eligible for it, and that's the overall takeaway: is greater flexibility for our students and families, and documenting attendance would be much easier. The 3 ways we can become present during remote asynchronous learning. We've talked about these before, but they have to be make progress in a learning management system of some sort. They have to interact with their student or teacher, student-teacher interaction, and or complete or turn in assignments through a learning management system. So those are 3 different ways to offer flexibility to students through this plan to gain attendance. So it's kind of all of those identified reasons that we chose a remote asynchronous instruction plan. And what we came to you with before was in-person learning with a contingency plan for remote learning as needed. And that's kind of what some of about half of our district has done this first 3 weeks of school. And if something were to happen with the pandemic and we had to do a quick pivot to learning, that would be considered in-person learning with a contingency plan for remote. We also talked about a virtual learning pathway for our students who select to complete their coursework all remotely. And again, we have about half of our students doing that. One underrated part of our plan, I just think doesn't get enough credit, is over the summer in July, we came up with what we called Virtual Plus. And we have it's only offered for our secondary students, but we have about 20% of our secondary students taking advantage of Virtual Plus. And it was interesting as we collaborate with our peer districts and people around the state. I myself called several districts before this plan went out. Hey, are you letting kids come back to do athletics or fine arts or certain electives? And every one of them said no. We announced our Virtual Plus. The next day I got 5 calls. How are you guys doing that? Now we're doing, and I think, and many more districts followed suit and are doing that, but I just point out, I think that's a piece of our plan that Ms. Lewis and Mr. Plunkett worked with the secondary principals and the counseling department. All of them came together to really make that opportunity possible for our kids. And I don't think it should be overlooked as just a small piece of the puzzle. So I'm not going to go into just kind of our overview and highlights of our plan. Real quick, there are 4 main focus areas that the state requires. And they are the instructional schedule for the day, the materials design, student progress, and then the implementation. You can kind of see some of the questions that go there. But I'm going to talk through them in more detail in the slides. Some resources TEA provided for this. The template with the 4 focus areas, that is the large document you got in your board packet and that you were looked at. That was a template with those questions and that we answered. They also provided a rubric for us to self-assess, some look-for documents, and some exemplars and non-examples of what to do. So in the instructional schedule, okay, these are some questions that are come straight out of the template, but what is our daily interaction with our kids? What are the student groups and grade levels will have opportunity to engage? How will teacher-student interactions be differentiated for students with additional learning needs? So in our plan, and again, these are just highlights, but in our plan we offer some flexibility, but it does expect students to participate virtually or in-person, remote, asynchronously every day. All the kids have a schedule that they follow, and they complete their assignments for their teacher independently. One of the things it says, the schedule aligns with TEA's definition of asynchronous and allows students to engage in the academic content on their own, interacting with teachers intermittently. And so I know that is a question that will probably come up later, is how much teacher interaction there is. But again, it was designed to work as an online program where they're working on their own and teachers come in as needed. So through this slide in, just so you kind of see the scope of the numbers that we're working with, the declaration started at the elementary level. It's almost half, 54% in person, 46% virtual. And secondary is 49% in person, and then when you add in that virtual plus and virtual together, it's right at 51%. So it is a large undertaking to think about that. And I can't say enough. I'm going to stop here again and just say enough about our school chiefs and our principals. Basically, over the course of a weekend, had to adjust their schedules and adjust their staffing, along with employee services, to say we need this many teachers to do this. That was a secondary schedule, as you know, takes all spring usually to create with course lists and everything, and they went back and did that kind of over a weekend and made some adjustments. So those folks have really worked hard to adjust that and make it worthwhile for our kids. Again, on the schedule, one of the things we did, because the numbers showed up almost half and half in just about every school, we worked that way. We were actually able, and this was a positive, because we went into it thinking that we would have a lot of teachers teaching kids from multiple schools. But because of the way the numbers worked out, for the most part, we have teachers from a certain school working with kids just from their school. And there's a few exceptions to that, but for the most part that happened, and I think that was a real positive, and hope we can continue that throughout the year. Other than that, we have designed the overall intent virtual. They do have more control over their time and their pace and their schedule. We're remote. They're held pretty tightly. They follow their daily schedule with their teachers. Of course, now they got to meet them today, and so they'll see how that schedule went for them today. Right? In both pathways, both virtual and remote, there is time built into their schedule for tutoring and intervention and things and support. Materials. One of the things we had to do is answer these questions, describe how your instructional materials support your asynchronous environment. And that's a tough one, because they're teaching virtually, which was something that was new, to do a full schedule, all your classes virtually. How will the materials be designed and adapted? How can we do that and make our curriculum virtual? And then how will we help kids with special needs? So a couple things we did, again, separating the two, in-person, remote, as you know, and as you probably remember, those for intermittent times, a temporary schedule like these first 3 weeks of school, or possibly later on in the year if we have to shut down a school or a class or the whole district, they would be able to pivot real quick. They'll use the LISD curriculum, existing digital resources, and they'll keep teaching the way they can and asynchronously, much like they've done the first few weeks. A virtual learning pathway is a little different. When we look at those materials, they're talking about a whole grading period or actually a whole year's content. And so our teachers are using that online coursework provided. We've used Seesaw and pre-K. We've got some Edgenuity courses, and we're using Canvas as well to align those classes. And our teachers have access to adjust those lessons as needed. So again, resources needed for virtual learning. This is specifically for the virtual learning pathway now, not the remote. But we looked for things that allow students to work independently, asynchronously. Okay, we also had to find stuff look for flexibility where students could submit work in a variety of ways and receive feedback from teachers, which they can do. And the materials could be differentiated for different student groups and different needs. I have a couple of examples there of SPED and English language learners. And so we're trying to do that. So those were some of the parameters with the materials design. In student progress, okay, these were some of the things that TEA required. We talk about a expectation for daily student engagements, which we have, tracking student engagement, things of that nature. And so I'll show you how we answered that. In both the in-person and remote, our in-person, remote, and virtual learning pathways, the following apply. First of all, they both have to cover the required curriculum per the Texas Education Code. By state guidelines, they have to follow our district's grading policies, which includes GPA and class rank. And then also expectations for progress in both pathways is as consistent to on-campus as it can be, which means there's daily assignments, there's participation, there's documenting of grades. One of the things that we have to continue to communicate with our parents in our learning management system is that Skyward is the official grade book. Just like some things that you would work in Edgenuity may not be for a grade, just like in regular in-person learning, there's things you do in class that are not for a grade, and so we're working through that and continue to communicate that. Teachers will take attendance every day, and the schedule for both in-person, as I mentioned before, in-person, remote, and learning pathway provide time for tutoring and intervention and student need. Implementation. What I would say right here is we can't thank our teachers enough. We truly can't, whether it's March and finishing the spring, but more importantly, what they've done and how hard they've worked to really learn a new way of instructing kids is just something to be very, very proud of from our staff. And so this implementation part looks at two basic parts. It looks at professional learning for our staff, and then how can we support parents in a good way. So one of the things we've done, and Shauna Miller has a great program created. She's done a great job to help them, but throughout the summer they were working on different things for both in-person, remote, and virtual learning. They've had the opportunity to interact and seek instructional facilitators. They've had as much training as we could possibly give in that short time frame. I know a lot of them are craving more, but we're working through that. The Canvas implementation has gone well, and we continue to do that. And our teachers are going through weekly PLCs, monthly updates, and different things as we kind of try to address and be flexible on what formatively they're learning and what their needs are as we go through this process that is so new. I think one of the things that we've done very well is our communications department has really helped put together a great return to school website. I've spent a lot of time looking at local and area districts and around the state to see what they're putting out there and kind of comparing, and I would put ours up against just about anybody as far as the information that we have for our parents to support and help. In addition to that, the technology department has done a great job trying to get kids their devices, to troubleshoot passwords, to help parents do those things. We've got a lot going on to try to implement a program, virtual learning program, and so those things are happening. We need to have additional support for our parents. We're not finished yet. The learning is not over, I would say. As we continue to identify needs and where their struggles are, we'll continue to be responsive to that and support that. Some of the things that we're doing, and this is specifically for the virtual pathway again, because it is so different from the in-person, is we created an MOU that parents could sign so they would kind of understand their responsibilities as they help their child, because it is different and the expectations are a little bit different. We've done some parenting onboarding instructional videos for them through several different platforms. We had parent orientations, which our virtual administrators hosted and had many, many people in attendance. We continue to go through continually update the website. Our virtual administrators have started sending home weekly electronic news and updates to their parents to keep them informed. And so I think that while nothing is perfect, especially 3 weeks in, they're trying very hard to communicate and support parents' needs as they've come up. I'm going to pass the final thoughts on to Dr. Rapp.
Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts as we were, reflecting on putting this plan together and conversations and different questions we've received over the last several weeks. That creation of content for a full virtual learning setting is a heavy demand to place on teachers. And I know we've all talked about this, but I thought it was important to bring back up that our own VLA teachers get a year to develop content prior to a new VLA course going live, and they still leverage a product to support students in their learning, even with that time for development. When you contrast our timeline with TEA's timeline, as they're working to also support districts, they did offer Schoology free to districts. That announcement was released on July 28th. Of course, this is an empty learning management system shell that districts can put content in. And it does say on the TEA website, due to the demand, Schoology is on at least a 30-day delay in helping onboard districts to their program. TEA is selecting multiple different products for districts to use. They've announced the math ones most recently. They've chosen 2 different platforms. As we know, one of the concerns we heard from our parents during at-home learning that we learned from was that concern about navigating multiple platforms and passwords and resources and how do you know where to go and how this one works and how that one works. And so TEA has taken the approach they are going to have multiple platforms that districts can use. That doesn't help solve a user-friendliness approach for parents. They still have work to do in identifying those, and they'll do that throughout September and the fall. And, of course, we're almost 4 weeks into school at this point. And then Schoology will provide features to enhance the products that TEA selects, but those integrations would have to be worked on by individual districts. And when you see just what we've been through when we're in control of the product selection and integration and the work that takes to navigate multiple products that might be available would be a heavy lift as well. So we were ready on day one with y'all's support for virtual learners. While we're working through technical issues and implementation struggles, no doubt, we did have systems in place to build upon. And I know I read recently an article that, for districts that are maybe relying on the content from TEA, which is completely fine. I understand why they would make that decision. That's putting districts in a really hard spot to be 4 weeks into school and not have resources that would be available to them. And the scale of what they're dealing with is large. I understand that too. They're working as hard and fast as they can as well. And then finally, on the last slide, if Dr. Thornell, if you'll move that one slide for me.
Nope, sorry.
Thank you. I just don't have that clicker. As he shared, we are, and I know you are as well, you've said it multiple times, and it never hurts to say it again, proud of what the learning and teaching team did to really prepare for an entirely new model of education, really between the end of May and early July. I know it feels like to many people it was a lot longer than that, but it wasn't. When you think about trying to close up shop on at-home learning and then being ready for the July 8th work session on what would we recommend to support our teachers and our families, it's really, really a fast turnaround. And as we said, the school chiefs, the campus principals, and the counselors on the master schedule and course selections. And I just think we know this, but to write it down, where school districts would normally have a year or more to create, pilot, review, and ramp up to launching at scale, that just was not possible in light of the existing situation. And then the last thing I think that's come up that's important is we do want to obtain parent and student feedback. We are happy to continue to receive it in the emails that we've all been receiving. We need that feedback. You all know, as hard as it can be sometimes to hear it, we welcome it and we act upon it. Doesn't mean we can automatically change course overnight, but it does mean that we take it into account, we learn, and we learn how to become better as a result of it. And that will continue to inform how we move forward long term. As much of the virtual learning systems built currently had to be designed under the premise that students and parents were not going to be accessible to us for any in-person orientation, training, support, bringing students in to hold them, to have reading groups with them. You wouldn't launch really a well-done elementary virtual model without conducting in-person reading groups or having students come in to do in-person work on the platform and then launch them into the wild world of navigating that on their own. But those are not things that COVID has allowed us the option to do, as our focus has been on safety for students and parents and staff. And so I do think that we're proud of the work that's been accomplished. We'll continue to learn and grow, and we're happy to take questions on the plan at this time.
And let me just jump in. As some of you know, I visited, I visited 10 campuses today, and so I was going around without the principal in most cases because I didn't want to bother them. And I visited with virtual teachers when I could, and of course I was a little scared to, hey, how's it going, Miss Virtual Teacher? And these are some, if you met them, you'd recognize. I mean, some of these are 18-year, great teachers. And the story that they consistently told me is how much better it was week after week. And that's really no surprise. We talked earlier about learning in context. And yeah, we had an extra week to prepare teachers and give them in-service on what, but you can't really do it until you have kids looking, across the WebEx with you. And so, it was really pleasing to hear that consistently from these teachers, that, it's so much better from week one, not because of technology issues, just because I'm more comfortable with the tools that I can use with my kids. And so, I just cannot reiterate. First off, just extremely grateful to the patience that our parents have exhibited, and most have exhibited great patience, and we're appreciative of that. And as Dr. Rapp said, we need to hear from those that it's not working. And I promise you, Dr. Thornell, Dr. Rapp, and all of us have responded, the best that we can. And we just continue to believe that it will continue to be a better experience. And but just extremely proud. I mean, just think that there were over 1,000 teachers, 1,000 teachers that all of a sudden had to shift to this mode of teaching. I mean, that's a huge task to pull off in 2 or 3 weeks. I don't care how much training you give people. So I'm just extremely proud of those folks and the folks that helped behind me. So
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Mr. Miller, we'll start with you.
I appreciate all the work behind this. I think, there are a lot of important statements, right? Dr. Rapp will say this, it took us 100 years to get where we were in March, and we've had a short period of time to turn that around. The other thing is where we get critiqued on some of the requirements and the lessons, especially middle or high school. We're not going to back down on those standards, so, it's a stark realization for some parents as to the things that actually happen in a classroom. And some have one kindergartner or second grader at home that they're trying to deal with, and we have a teacher that has 22, and maybe an aide and maybe not, and trying to deal with a lot of different dynamics. And so I'm fine with the plan. I think the big question for me is the plan can't be absent technology. And I think we have, especially at the elementary level, that's got to be, from my perspective, proven to be the right choice. And we have to be receptive to when that may not be the right choice. And so I'm not suggesting anything. I'm saying what everybody knows to be true and is thinking. And so there has to be a period of time for us to make that decision and then transition to something like this. And I think, Lori, I sat there and listened to what you were saying after Dr. Thornhill was done, and you did a great job too. But I was thinking about what you were saying. I thought, well, why don't we just make a video on that? Because what you were saying makes a lot of sense. And if we had a video on that, because that's the new world, videos, it actually, I think, would give a lot of peace to some parents. And so, hey, one of the things is, we know that you parents at elementary level expected more teacher time. Sorry if we didn't communicate that well. I'm not suggesting we apologize, but here's the plan going forward. Here's the things that we're working on. We've got to make some progress in these areas. They're an acknowledgement of gaps that we're working on filling versus letting parents form Facebook factions that determine that they conclude that we're not doing anything to close those gaps, whether it's within the current system or other systems or some. For example, you guys have already started to introduce LISD curriculum and course work into Ingenuity, right? Or I think so. Hey, that's big progress from a model in July where we were thinking, we're just trusting them on their curriculum, and we'd have to adopt some of their pedagogy and to get to the TEKS. So we've made progress, and I think we need to stand strong on that. But acknowledge that the one area we're struggling is an area where this is a very formative time. And you guys know that, you're educators, so I would just say, let's go for it. Whatever you guys want here, I'll support it, with the understanding that I think we just have this gap that really needs to be closed, and if we can't close it, then we are introspective and self-confident enough to say, we need to go down a different path. And I'll reiterate what I said in the meetings last week. I think we are sophisticated enough that we could put enough money behind virtualizing our own curriculum. What that means technology-wise, whatever, blah, blah, I don't know. But I think that we are sophisticated enough, you were in that meeting, that we could do that. And to some degree, we're starting to do it because we're putting our own lesson plans into Ingenuity. So that's maybe Ingenuity's like we talked about Schoology, it's a shell, right? It's Canvas. Well, maybe we have a platform that's a shell that we start introducing our curriculum and then addressing the parent concerns at those K through 2 levels of where we've got some technology issues, screens shaking, taking a video, making it complicated. Then I think we're on a great path that gives a lot of flexibility into the future, because my biggest concern is, I'll close with this, Catherine, we've got to be really careful as to how this transforms the role of the teachers. Teachers have to be concerned. So lest they not be concerned, they should be, because there's a lot of innovation coming that will replace the role of the teacher. And so, not exclusively, of course, but in some cases, that's what's happening, right? So I think it's a great plan. We've already passed a resolution, right, to move in this direction, that we could move in this direction. So let's go for it.
And I'd just say, Mr. Miller, a couple of things. One, we will not be afraid to pull the trigger if we have to, okay? And certainly we have discussed, those what ifs. And I also know that we've continued to communicate modifications that we've made, in all these different programs from the first and we're not finished with that. I mean, we'll continue to say, hey, we need to cut this or modify this. So, you can't say you want to be flexible and nimble and not be flexible and nimble. And so we've got to do that ourselves. And so, we will. But, we could maybe virtualize, but we could not virtualize our curriculum in a timely manner is part of the problem.
I'm
as
not
far
saying, Rob was in the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
timely.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, I think, there's no doubt. I mean, when we teach VLA, we don't teach it all virtual. I mean,
Right.
I mean, that's not our first option to teach a kid fully virtual. I mean, so, yeah, we certainly know that there are better ways to do it.
Thank you.
Ms. Lasan?
So thank you so much for your presentation and for your hard work into all of this and the people back there that are, look at them, they're like, I'm tired. But thanks, I know that y'all have been working so hard, and thanks also for the Edgenuity demonstration, that y'all did last week for us. I think that was very helpful. The only thing that I'm sure y'all have it figured out, I have no doubt, but I have just, heard anecdotally some questions from parents about attendance taking and it not being consistent, I guess, in the virtual world, not now, obviously, but, of it not being consistent or at least it not being clear to parents. So, we all know how that is. But, so has that been kind of figured out or what have you?
I think attendance has been a challenge, and
Okay.
some of the challenge has been some of our technology issues with
Okay.
the program or whatnot. I think it's reported to be cleaning up, but I mean, it's still, if it's a time or a day when they're meeting synchronously, obviously a teacher can tell whether they're there or not.
Right.
If they're having to go into the management system or see if they've turned something in or anything, it can be very time consuming for some of our teachers, and I think some of that was them working out, giving some feedback. Ms. Fitzhughes and Ms. Bray and the accountability side have been working on some even videos and procedures to try to help that.
Okay.
But what you are hearing is probably accurate. It was very difficult to take attendance the first couple of weeks of school.
Okay.
And Ms. Lasan, that's one of the two topics I talked to the commissioner about personally in a one-on-one phone call a week ago.
Way to go.
So we got some clarification on that we then met with Dr. Fitzhugh and Kathy Bray. And so our teachers who strive to do everything to the letter, we think we can lighten that load and make it simple. But at the same time, as Dr. Thornell showed, there's 3 different ways for attendance to occur asynchronously. And so that causes some confusion, but we hope to lighten the load a little bit soon.
Okay.
And it
great.
would make it seem like from class to class or teacher to teacher, how I get attendance taken in math is different from ELA because it can be.
Right.
And
okay.
so there is not, it's a very different attendance world. And so to a parent, when the ELA teacher and the math teacher are doing something different, it's like, well, don't y'all,
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of the flexibility with the remote asynchronous is you do have those multiple ways to try to help a kid be in attendance as much as possible. So it is going to feel a little inconsistent.
Okay. That's good to know.
Well, and part of the flexibility, an example might be that they didn't do their math until 7 o'clock at night. The teacher might have caught, they might have been absent, but then the next day it gets caught back up. And so there's little tricks like that as well.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Ms. Cox?
Well, I'll just start off again by saying thank you. I mean, this just goes to show what an amazing district we have, and we have the best of the best, because to put a program like this together, I think is pretty amazing. And I think the word I've been using this year is grace. Dr. Rogers has been using flexibility, but I think grace. I think we have to give grace to our teachers, to our staff who have put forth blood, sweat, and tears to make this happen. And as Dr. Rogers alluded to, it only gets better. I mean, the first week was a train wreck, but it has gotten better. And even I saw it even with my daughter. I mean, the second week she was crying because she couldn't get in this, but then it got better. And it keeps getting better, and we keep taking those comments from parents and implementations and making it better, and only keep doing that. But my question is, and I love the flexibility. I want to go on to say that too, because not all learners learn the same, and we learn that through the Edgenuity. So I like the opportunity that kids have. Not everybody wants to sit there and listen, and then everybody go through that instruction at the same time. So I love that. My question is on the synchronous. how long is the teacher to be on the screen? Because, I'm thinking, okay, you're to read a book for the week and we're going to talk about it on Friday. That really could be my only time that I just talked to you on Monday and you don't see me again. And to me, that's hard. I'm a visual person. I need to see that teacher and I need some accountability. And this is where, alluding to Ms. Lewis' presentation that they made earlier, how important those study skills and just accountability are going to be important, because those parents are working. Some are two working parents, and they don't have time to keep micromanaging Johnny, Susie, whatever. Did you do this? Did you do this? There's to be some accountability, and so I'm just curious how all that is working.
So your
Kind of like a loaded question, but it's mostly about how long the teachers.
Your question is probably the most common one that's been asked in the last week and a half or so. At the secondary level, we've set a minimum expectation of 30 minutes for one class period a week. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot. However, one of the things we did when we provide this flexibility of this schedule, every teacher has a couple times a day where they are free to have small group, one-on-one instruction, tutorial time. And I think what parents will see, and how I've been responding to parents that I talk to about that, as the child and the teacher get to know each other and they see their progress in there, they're going to know which ones they need to reach out to and which ones they need to help. And I think our teachers are already doing that. I have several parents this week. I said, I'm going to call back next week and check on you and see if it's gotten better, that improvement piece. But that's kind of where that was set, and a lot of that is some scheduling issues and where do we set that expectation. Again, it's a minimum. I've talked to parents that said, well, I have one teacher that's done it 3 times and one that I've only seen once. And so there's still some feeling out process and some grace that goes with that, but I think our teachers are working very hard to try to be visible and be more visible with them. But that is probably the most common question that I have received is teacher interaction. I don't know if Dr. Rapp?
Yeah, I would say one of the things we've really tried to start asking parents to do is really communicate too with the campus principal or assistant principal about if they're not seeing their teacher often, if the student's not seeing their teacher often enough, especially at middle school where the schedule does not line up by the class periods because of the way, and Miss Lewis and I spent a whole day in my office trying to figure out how in the world, what are we going to do when we can't run the class period schedule for middle school students, but not repeat the same mistakes of at-home learning where teachers were scheduling on top of each other and then find that a parent said, well, now my kid can't see any of their teachers because they aren't talking to each other about the schedule. So we're trying to learn from our at-home learning lessons and provide flexibility in the schedule. And so that tutoring intervention block at the beginning and the end of the day, as Dr. Thornell said, is critical. That really you have to view that time for a kid as that is independent learning time with my teacher. And that's something that we are continuing to work with the campus principals on, that and really helping support the students and knowing that's really when you can be getting some of your individual needs met. When they see tutoring, they think, well, I don't need tutoring. I just need time with my teacher. Well, in this program, in this approach, time with your teacher is not going to be the whole class time because now you're starting to really be in different places. And so I think that's just a continued learning curve when we think about our students and them struggling with self-advocacy, especially if you think about a 6th grader or a 9th grader and raising their hand in class isn't going to happen. Same thing virtually. So we have work to do in that regard because really the whole class time was meant to be minimal so that we weren't holding hostage time that a bunch of kids didn't need and as their pace started to differentiate. So
It just worries me some, I guess, because you think about a 10, 11, 12-year-old, even my daughter, 15.
Sure.
Oh, I've got 2 weeks to do this. I'm going to do it at midnight on the last night that I have to turn it in. So what have I done
This worked best
prior
in
to
2
pressure
weeks.
response? I really haven't done much because I just, so I worry about their learning opportunities, if they're missing things in there, because the self-advocacy is huge.
It is.
And they're not self-advocating. If they've got the time to do it, I'm going to take my whole 2 weeks to do that. So I'm happy that the teachers are reaching out, but then I worry about our teachers. You've got 33 kids in the classroom. You don't have time to be watching 33 kids and calling every day going, I saw you didn't turn in this. So it's a balance, and I commend y'all for doing that, but I just think it's something we're going to have to continue keep monitoring and balance, because I don't want these kids to fall behind.
And I think long-term, the benefit is that we wish we could do is you would bring, like I said, you would bring kids in and train them up first, and that's not as easily done in the virtual realm. And you would say, here are the 10 things, like, let's look each other in the eyeballs, let's all agree that this is how it's going to work, and you just don't have that here. And so that's a learning curve for everybody.
So to follow up on Ms. Cox's question, you told us about secondary. You didn't say anything about elementary.
Elementary's meeting in the mornings having a morning meeting, and then they meet periodically during the day based on their schedule. But it is asynchronous learning. They're doing their own lessons individually.
Is there a time? I mean, we have a minimum time for secondary. Do we have that for elementary?
Well, elementary meets at their morning meeting every morning,
Okay.
so that is their minimum
That's their
time.
minimum.
And then they have different schedules on grade level and times, and so
I think Ms.
it's like
Gall,
that.
I think
Ms. Gall's
she's
got that?
Yeah.
there you go.
What?
Oh, we can't.
I'm going to repeat what you said. 75 minutes to a day. So that's an opportunity throughout the day that doesn't necessarily mean, I'm translating since you're all the way back there, that doesn't necessarily mean all students all the time for 75 to 120 minutes a day. Little small groups, I'm assuming. I did want to say something to you, Mr. Miller. I don't think that a good teacher can ever be replaced. I don't care how good your program is. I don't think a good teacher can ever be replaced.
A good teacher couldn't be replaced. I've said that innovation is going to replace teachers because primarily of parent choice. So I totally agree. I mean, I've been criticized,
Okay.
as you know, on social media for not being a virtual fan. The reason I'm not a virtual fan is because I don't think a good teacher can be replaced. So it's a function of innovation will cause parents to believe that these options are
Well, I think
good
they're
long-term.
believing something very different. That's my interpretation. That as they're going through this, that they're seeing, quite frankly, what a teacher does all day. I did want to give a shout out. I was at a campus and was told this, and then I also spoke to an attendance clerk at another elementary school, and that is they called it the Heather Report. I don't know that we have a Heather in that department, but it's called the Heather Report, and it's the one where they can look at the attendance for the whole week. And I went going to go on a limb and assume that Kathy Bray made that report, and that it is so beneficial to them, and so I wanted to publicly acknowledge that really hard work, because attendance is a really big part of this. So I went looking for a Heather and could not find one.
I appreciate that, Ms. Project, because there is no doubt that has been a heavy lift for our teachers and for our attendance clerks. And luckily for them, Kathy Bray and Dr. Fitzhugh help work out systems to make it easier. So.
So I did want to get
And
that.
Heather, I guess.
Heather
And-
Peters. Heather Peters.
Heather Peters.
Oh, well,
Okay, Heather.
gee,
Geez. You've met Heather before.
It's like the trifecta of
Yeah,
smartness.
it is. There's a bunch
not
of
be
brains,
taking
and
on
that's
those three in anything. I do want to say that it has gotten better every week, and it's just kind of like we ask that of our students for their iStation learning and everything else, that it has gotten better, and I appreciate, along with everybody here, that. I do have a question when you talked about lessons being adjusted. Is that district-wide? Is that by a teacher? Is that by a campus? Is that by a grade level? You talked about it's slide 19 is where you talked about it.
Sure. That is still a grace and experimental period for
Okay.
us. There are some constraints of some of the programs of, do I do that whole class? Do I individualize that per student? Can I take something out, put something in? We are working with our teachers, and we'll continue to get better at that. But the flexibility will exist, and we'll continue to.
So it's by teacher.
The approach for that
Well,
looks different between middle and
Yeah.
between
Okay.
secondary and
There's
elementary.
a whole gamut to that answer.
Sorry.
So, but go ahead.
And Karen can speak a little bit to what the teachers are able to do at secondary's hide assignments for students.
Okay.
So that's that's a little bit of the customizing there.
Right.
And at elementary, Adrian.
At a teacher level, hide something. I think we kind of demonstrated that. Hide something because you're going to live teach it, so there's no. As long as you're not. That they make.
Thank you.
Have asked them to try to be consistent with their grade level if they have more than one teacher out there.
That's it.
I would just say the other challenge with that is making sure that there remains enough content in there to cover the TEKS and everything with that. That's why we've stopped short, given teachers individual chances, but stopped short of just saying we're going to cut all this because it is still a course.
Ms. Hassett?
I'm going to also piggyback on the timing of secondary and elementary. So secondary is 30 minutes per teacher per week, and elementary is 75 to 120 minutes a day, including the bookends.
It's a little different. Elementary has their class, right? And so they have that FaceTime with their class, where the secondary has built-in freedom in their schedule to do those same type of things, small group tutoring, but they also are dealing with a lot more kids, and so it's not. Does that make sense?
Right. It just, for some of my friends who have both, they seem that they see the high school teachers more because they have more high school teachers. Therefore, they're feeling that they're not getting enough instruction time from the elementary because the beginning part of the day isn't necessarily direct teach. It's just a check-in time, as well as the beginning, the bookends of the day is something that they're needing to proactively ask for right now. And so that's a little the disconnect that the parents that I know are feeling, is that they feel at the high school level where they say my child doesn't need the same level and my child does need that at the elementary. They're not getting the same direct teach because of the way that our classes are set up. And so I guess my request is just to continue to evaluate that process and how can we do more of the direct teach at the elementary level with the Edgenuity product that we have, with our lesson plans, to make it more, because it does seem a little bit more like in-person learning, the way we're currently doing it with high school. More supportive of the parents, more understandable for the students. And so that's what I've been hearing from my friends.
And Ms. Hassett, I would just also ask for them to reach out to their campus administrator or their virtual learning administrator too, because that's the only way then they can check into those concerns. So.
I will definitely tell them to do that as well, for sure.
I mean, it's the same, and that's really, I guess, what I would try to tell a virtual parent is, if they were in person and had an issue or concern about a teacher, they'd go to the principal. And so we still need that to happen even in the virtual world. So.
Okay. Another question I had is really for that, based on the student need, for the teachers who are starting to learn their students because it's a new school year, how are they going to determine this? If I'm a B student, I don't want the teacher to assume I'm okay because I'm a B student. Maybe, I'm normally an A student and I'm really struggling and I need some help. Just because I'm a B student doesn't mean I'm okay. How are we going to make sure that students aren't overlooked because their grades are acceptable throughout this process? And so I'm wondering how we're going to do that.
It's a fair question. I would say much like what we've talked about in an in-person situation, a teacher getting to know their kids is very, very important. And I think one of the things we've had a lot of internal discussions about is progress monitoring, and especially where are we going to be at the end of 9 weeks? Are these kids going to have made sufficient progress? Have we had to hide so many lessons? What do their grades look like? I mean, all those data points will come in for a teacher and a child, but I do think that's a very fair question as we get to know this program and get to know a whole new way of monitoring our kids' learning, right? I mean, because they don't see them every day and things of that nature. So that will definitely be a learning point. Dr. Repp, I think I cut you off. Are you about to say
No,
something?
I'm not cut off at all. I do think that's a learning curve for all of us, is what I would honestly say. I think the schedule designed is a little bit challenging in terms of spending enough time with all of your students to know, like you were an A before, now you're a B. And I think that's where the communication between the parent and the teachers, the virtual learning admins, the campus administrators is more important in this setting than it's ever been, because probably in person we just sort of kind of rock along until open house or progress reports, and this is just so new for everyone. And so if I just can't say enough about, the more communication they can give the teachers that they're struggling, they can give the principal, the counselors, whoever, it really will help us help them.
I have one more question. Shall I wait?
No, go ahead.
Okay. For the tech issues that are, how are those being pushed down to the parents? I mean, one of my friends has had the shenanigans of Canvas and Edgenuity and the grades not syncing, and she might be a little bit frustrated.
Sure.
Might be ready to chuck everything. And so how are we making sure the teachers know the current technology issue so they can tell the parents the current technology issue, because there seems to be a delay in what's very frustrating to the parents.
Can you help us with that? Not to put you on the spot.
Well,
Brian.
one quick question in that scenario too. So, if something's been graded in Edgenuity specifically, that's not going to pass straight to Skyward. So the Edgenuity, if you view that Edgenuity is built with this idea of housing all of this practice that normally a teacher would direct, they call all that practice assignments, even if it's something as simple as like move these little cards around on this thing, right? And they're going to put a grade on that. Again, building in some level of accountability, because I think to Ms. Cox's point, you have to keep on saying, like, this is important, like, you got to do this, and that was the whole struggle with the red bar showing up for kids, and there was a whole set of concerns around that. Should we leave it, should we not, and all those kind of things. But the grades aren't passing back from Edgenuity to Skyward, so a teacher has to decide, what is it that I'm going to grade? And of course, if there's multiple teachers at the grade level, really that's a conversation they need to have together, because then they'll decide what they enter into the Skyward grade book. So if that's kind of the scenario, I would say that's not really a technology broken issue, because Edgenuity grades aren't automatically going in to Skyward grade.
Or is it the one where the grades got lost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's a different
Yeah,
scenario.
a common problem is grades have disappeared.
Even isn't this
Disappeared.
today even,
So,
or this Friday, last Friday. It was even happening.
and so the one answer I would have for that one, and our teachers are working very, very hard.
Right.
But we have kind of identified that as a user error, because if they're enrolling, and Karen could explain it a lot better than I
Error
can,
on
right?
the student part, user error on the teacher part, user error
Just
on both.
learning the Edgenuity program. Because what we found is some of those grades are archived, and they've been able to find them. But Karen, you want to help speak to that? Is that when missing grades? What's
We did find several courses that have been archived, and so I was able to enable those courses again, and the students pick back up where they left off.
So the work was there. They were able to find it, but it has been a source of frustration in some places.
Teacher error.
Because they said that there was something, the teacher was saying, go look in this spot, and it wasn't available on her son's end, and so she was frustrated that he was going to have to redo something again.
And the content, what the students do in Edgenuity is archived.
Okay.
It should be somewhere.
It's there. You gotta
So
find it.
what we have to do is
the
talk with
technology problem.
Edgenuity to
Call
find
the
out
FBI.
where did it go.
It hasn't
And
disappeared.
in 9 times out of 10, I may be overestimating, it's something unfortunately that the teacher has selected that's caused the work to go to a home it does not belong to.
Is that the same thing where the teacher has multiple sections of the same course, and it might be?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't, let's get back to the asynchronous learning plan. If you have questions,
How are these issues being pushed down
Yeah.
to the teachers so they know
Okay.
quickly on how to communicate with the parents?
Brian's worked really hard.
I'll add a couple pieces to that. One is, with the teachers that are in the virtual space, we've set up team spaces for them. And I mentioned that a little bit. I don't know if it was one of the small group meetings that you were in, but just watching really the maturity of the discussions in those spaces, even over the last week and a half. The teachers, I think, are, when something like that happens, or if it's we have a known technical issue during this time, we try to get that stuff out in those spaces right away. But then also some of the stuff that is more, a bit of a learning curve, some of the teachers actually are self-helping other teachers. And I think that's where you can start seeing this is starting to take off because their capacity is going up the more they use the system. So I think having those support spaces has helped quite a bit.
Okay, that's helpful.
and I think most of my questions were answered. I was just wondering who monitors when a teacher, or is there any monitoring when a teacher hides something and adds her own curriculum? Is it curriculum that she has to add that's been provided by the district? Do you understand what I'm asking? Or do we have spot checks? Do we have, just to make sure that those lessons are still following TEKS and?
Well, anything that a teacher would choose to supplement, add on their own, just like they would at an in-person setting, we would expect that they're using what they would have done in person, which should be aligned to the LISD curriculum. So, yeah.
One other piece to that too, we do have our content people working out ahead of some of this as well. So if there's content that we already have, they're putting it in, especially at the elementary level, putting it into that system. So it's really got the eyes of our best content people.
They're district level, yep.
Yep.
The hiding of things would be more a teacher decision. That's not something that we're looking at the district level because, again, it does go back to that individual student situation and what did they show they were okay with, what did they not, and so that's not something that we've been analyzing.
Okay, so that just becomes their virtual lesson plan as they prepare it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Cox?
I don't know. I think I already know the answer, but I don't know. I have a little doubt in my little back of my head. So, Dr. Rogers, would you just clarify? So, the virtual students, you were telling Ms. Hassett, please have the parents reach out to the principal. So, their principal is still the person on their main campus, even though, as you stated, you've tried really hard to make sure the teachers are the ones on their campus, but it still could be a teacher somewhere else teaching students from the east or whatever side. So that principal's still in charge, that main point of contact, even though their teacher might be somewhere else.
That's absolutely right. I mean, we want them still connected to their campus
Okay.
principal. Now, we've created these 6 virtual principals too to help monitor the program. And so if it's a technical question, they may send it to the Aram Shazads or, but we want them to connect to their campus principal. I mean, we don't want them.
But do the parents know, like, it's a different person? So
Yeah, I think, I'm going to defer to them, but I think
how's
they've
that
been.
communicated, I guess I'm asking, because I'm thinking, who do they really call? Or if we were to say, you need to really.
I think the communication right now has been a little bit mixed, and that's one of the things that we're really starting to try to push is go to your home campus.
Okay.
So I think you'll see even more of that. I think that they did have who do I call? Do I call the virtual person? Do I go through the teacher or whatnot? And now as we get into what I would call the school year and as we get to know each other, and if there's a concern about a teacher, then they should go to the home campus and talk about, or a concern about their child, either go to the home campus.
We did put virtual learning websites out there, and so definitely, really, if a parent calls one of the virtual learning admins and they're like, this isn't really my
The
realm,
teacher issue, they would
they're
defer
going to
them.
reference them back to the
Yeah.
campus principal. And if the campus principal needs more support, they're going to maybe send them. So it may feel kind of like, and I liken it to the STEM Academy. Really, you've got Jonas Green, who coordinates the STEM Academy implementation across all the schools. So I may have STEM-specific questions that go beyond campus principal. I'm talking to Jonas about the STEM. I'm talking to the campus principal about the implementation. Virtual parents will have multiple contacts because you've got the people helping oversee the program, you've got the home campus connection, and you may need to talk to any of these smart people sitting in the back too.
I was processing it in my head, so I apologize, but I was just thinking, okay, as a parent, I want an answer now. So what does that layer look like? Am I going to get a response like 5 days later? I want my child to get answered now. So I didn't know what that looked like. So thank you.
Yeah, I've been very pleased with the virtual principals. They've been responding in a very timely manner.
The most delayed answers are technical ones where we have tickets in and we're trying to troubleshoot what's going on. Okay. Anything else?
Well, that comment, that conversation just confused me a little bit. So I do appreciate that you have a campus leader, you have a teacher, and you have a Dr. Shazad and whoever the other
virtual administrators.
I think we should not lose sight of what we've been talking about for the last couple of years, which is the Disney way, that even in this, right, there's a level of creating ambassadors and customer service, a level expectation. So, the best customer service call is this. I don't know the answer, but I can tell you I'm the person that's going to help you find out what the answer is. And so to the extent that the person that receives the call can make sure that it was closed out within reason, I think that would show a lot to parents. That if they call, because we see the emails, call Dr. Shazad or, call a campus principal. Campus principal is an easy one, I think, to facilitate whoever that is, but somebody has to close the loop, right? I just think that's a key component here, and we can't forget the things that have been leading up to. If we were in a normal year, we'd really be pushing, secret shoppers and some of these other things, and there's an opportunity for us to really provide good customer service here, and that means someone's got to own it, and it may not be the person that solves it. So to the extent that that can happen, I think that's helpful to us. I think that's where some of our issues are. They're really not, some issues are not really issues. They're lack of understanding, they're user errors, they're people that, you guys have had call and talk to parents and like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. That's why that button's not responding, that app is not responding on the iPad or whatever. That will go, and then I think you guys got to help us tell the story. Like there are things you guys are talking about tonight. I just think, you know what, if our community got an update every 3 days, every Wednesday, or, and I know that's hard, Dr. Rogers, but really it would go a long way to showing progress, which is significant. Because you know what, when we sat down last week, it was a little bit different. Mm-hmm. We got together the week before, it was different. And today it's a lot better. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better. And, we had kids in school. Guess what? We didn't get killed today on emails. And kids were in school. So, I mean, things are improving, but I think we should make an acknowledgement of, take ownership, but make an acknowledgement of where we've got things we're working on and where we've had some success so people can repeat that to others and share those stories.
Anything else? All right. Well, you're already here.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, one last item. So, Brother Colbeck.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. This hopefully is fairly quick. Essentially, this is a discussion item
It would be quick.
regarding our current ticketing system, and this was actually a project that we were working on really pre-COVID, and obviously it's been pedal to the metal since March. But at the end of the day, the current system that we have, it's no longer being supported. It's been acquired really twice since we've purchased it, and we need to replace our current system. So we're working with procurement and contracts to do an RFP. We are in that process, which we've done in the past, been trying to do more of a proof of concept, where we go through the evaluation process and feel like, okay, let's set this up, learn a little bit about the how it would work, also kind of vet the support side of it. So our plan is to move forward with some sort of proof of concept in September and October and bring this back as a recommendation item to basically replace the system. I think the timing is going to be better. It was something that we maybe could have pulled off, but as you could kind of see the steamroller coming at you with the start of school, we just had to push it back. So we do need to move forward with it and replace the current system.
And so really tonight is just to put it on your radar that they're going to run this proof of concept for a couple months and then bring it back to you after we've put out an RFP. So.
And the proof, just to be clear too, the proof of concept would be, it would be public facing. There'd have to be a communication campaign around it and let people know here's a new method for entering, tickets at that point. Setting up, configuring the different service types, very similar to what we have set up. So we'd have to have a communication campaign around it as well.
And have you guys already picked the system you're going to try?
For the proof of concept, yes.
Okay. I mean, from an ITSM perspective, have we evaluated, the hottest thing out now is ServiceNow, right? So are we in that category?
With not getting into the details of the procurement, it's still open.
Okay.
We can perhaps talk after, but that's a good product.
Okay, this was listed under discussion. Is there any more discussion? Anybody have any questions or anything? Ms. Cox?
Just clarification, so you're beta testing something right now?
No, not. We've reviewed the responses to the procurement, and we're ready to start.
Like a recommendation?
Well, we'd be doing on some of these systems, it's once you actually set them up, you're really ready to put them into production. So it would be us really using it for a period of defined time with where we are in agreement with that vendor, and if it's successful, we'll be bringing it back to the board and bringing a recommendation with it.
So my question is, because you're going to test it for the 2 months, if whenever you bring it to us, if it is approved, it's immediately rolled out.
There might be some configuration changes, but I mean, we've done quite a bit of homework on this, and it would be, at that point, it would be rolled out. We'd have to actually roll back off of it.
And I'm assuming it would be easier to roll out a ticketing system in the middle of the year when we don't tend to have as many than at the beginning of the year.
Well, that's part of the thought.
It's just a thought.
We needed some of the start of school to settle out before we could introduce one more new thing, basically.
You just didn't want to get stoned from teachers, did you?
There was enough going on without that.
There was a bunch of people that he didn't want to get stoned.
It wasn't just teachers.
Are there any other questions?
The stoning might have been
So the trial period, you will negotiate this trial period, so in case something blows up with this thing in 2 months, we're not on the hook for anything.
We could fall back on the current system that we have, but ultimately, I think if we use the application, do not like it, we'll have to look at our next option and try that. But our plan is to not bring a recommendation forward until we're satisfied with what we've looked at.
I'm just making sure this isn't going to cost the district anything for these 2 months.
No.
Correct? Okay.
It's for free.
Anything else? No?
Good luck.
All right.
Thank you.
Godspeed.
Well, if there's nothing else, I will call this meeting adjourned, and the time is 9:39 p.m. Thank you all. Be safe. Going
Thank
home.
y'all.